Could you please clear up the Cuck article you wrote?
I am not going to talk about
Again?
this.
Okay.
And basically, you know what? Fuck you for bringing this up right here and right now. Why are you doing this to me?
I didn't know that. I didn't know what it was.
Well, just use a little bit of fucking common sense.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Elizabeth,
Heartfelt.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows, only time. We Who can say why your heart sighs as your love flies, only time. And who can say why your heart cries when your love lies, only Who can say when the roads meet that love might be in your heart? And who can say when the day sleeps if the night heats all your heart? Night heats all your can say if your love grows as your heart shows, only time. And who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time. Who knows, only time. Who knows, only
Hello, Benjamin.
Hey, Jack, how you doing?
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Nightcap for April 16th, 2022. Had to do a special emergency stream. It's Alpha Cuck 3, everybody. Jack Murphy has made his return. He's made his return. Now, we've covered this story a few times. We did Alpha Cuck 2, and now we're back for Alpha Cuck 3. We're going to be watching through his most recent interview that he gave with Benjamin Boyce. Benjamin Boyce did an interview with him, and we're going to watch through it. Going to have a good time. It's going to be great. We are simul streaming on DLive, Odyssey, and YouTube. What's up, Hagbard? He has a question. He doesn't understand. He's like, what is going on? What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Only time. It was only a matter of time before he'd make his return. You can't keep a guy like that down. Now, technically, he kind of came back into the public eye, I don't know, like a month ago. but he hadn't addressed anything about what happened. And through this interview, he did. So this is just going to be exclusively just this interview. As far as I can tell, it's kind of long. It's like an hour and a half. So we're just going to watch through it, make some comments, have a good time. It's going to be the best. It's going to be the best. And might as well just get started. No more pomp and circumstances. I feel like Enya is pomp and circumstance enough. You know what I mean? When you bring it, you start off with Enya. What else can you really do? What else can you really do?
Hello, Benjamin.
Hey, Jack, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. How are you doing?
Pretty
Good
good.
to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It has been. I think we spoke in 2019.
It's been that long already. Holy cow.
Yeah, the whole pandemic happened.
That did happen.
Jack was sticking dildos in his ass in 2019. He's like, oh man. I mean, it seems like yesterday, but it wasn't.
I think, if you remember that.
Just 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks with the masks, apparently.
Oh,
they say.
wait, are you guys
On the
still
plane.
2 weeks
On the
land?
plane.
Oh, okay.
No, they just announced that they may release the mask mandate on the plane in 2 more weeks. Just 2 more weeks, they said.
2 weeks. It's been the longest 2 weeks I've ever experienced, man.
Yeah, man. I can tell you about that too. Yeah. Since 2019, but we first talked in like 2017, 18.
I think you went on Mike's
Now, here's a little compliment I can give to old Murph here. So he's got like this green screen background. It seems like he's probably using chroma key to get this effect, this really alpha, this apex level background. And we don't see too much green or other discoloration around the dome. You know what I mean? It's not really there. That's good stuff. Hagbard says 2 things. Hit me with it, buddy.
Mike Paros's you didn't go on, you went to his class.
That's right, at Evergreen.
And that was in the fall of 2017.
Remember when Evergreen was like,
Do I
the
remember?
hot spot, man?
Yeah.
It was.
It had its moment. They're almost dead now.
It did.
Hagbard said, how's this guy talking as just ahead? It's like Futurama. Yeah, he's got that. He's just in a void, a pit of darkness. And Hagbard wants to know, and does Cuck Murphy dye that beard? That's what everybody wants to know. He claims that he doesn't. But I don't believe him. I don't believe him. If you see old pictures of Jack Murphy, you see that he's like wearing when he has hair, he's clearly has dyed his hair in the past. So that would lead me to believe that he probably dyes his beard. Although we are seeing a little lightening of the beard coming through. I mean, that's crazy. That's a crazy claim. That might be the most fantastical claim he's ever made, that he doesn't dye his beard. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe they'll get into it. Maybe they'll talk about it.
Is it?
Yeah, they're about done.
Well, beautiful campus, nevertheless.
Yeah, totally empty now. They really did a number. They doubled down, and then they kept on doubling down.
Did they pay for it in student enrollment?
Yeah, student enrollments, I think it's around 1,500.
And if people don't know, this guy is from Evergreen College, which was kind of like in the news a couple years ago. It's where Brett Weinstein came from. And all the kind of the craziness, the crazy woke SJW Antifa stuff, they really kind of like took over the whole campus and caused a lot of havoc.
Under 2,000, and they need to be at 4,000, but it just went.
Boy.
And so they're just floundering. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're supported by the state, and the state's controlled by Dems, and the Dems really like the equity agenda, so they're trying to, keep it going.
Keep it afloat at all costs.
Yeah.
You can feel the nervous energy, like the small talk. He's trying to bring Jack's guard down a little bit before he gets into the questions. That's what it feels like, right? Because they haven't spoken to each other in a while. Jack's coming off of a big scandal. A huge scandal. Probably the biggest scandal to ever hit the manosphere. So he's buttering him up, it seems like. Or maybe he's just a cool guy. I know this guy, Benjamin Boyce here, this is kind of his interview style. It's really laid back. It's genteel. Seems like he's pretty fair. And I think I've watched portions of this interview. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but that's where he's coming from. He's not here to crucify Jack Murphy, but Jack being the apex level operator that he is, he may just crucify himself.
Yeah.
To truth and reason and reasonableness.
Oh yeah, exactly. Those are the key words.
Reasonableness.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh man. Well, today
Hagbert says Matt Groening is an Evergreen graduate. Futurama head works at Evergreen. I just uncovered a conspiracy. Yeah, I don't know if he worked there. I know he went there for a period of time and he disagreed with like the agenda that was going on. And that's like kind of what leads him to be kind of part of this community of people. Remember the intellectual dark web? Like he's on the periphery of that. He wasn't part of it, but he was kind of in the background. He was one of the players at the time. And that's what kind of gave him a YouTube career. And he's actually, he's done some decent work though as an interviewer. He does a lot of highlighting and focusing on people that are detransitioners, talks to a lot of people that would be considered TERFs that have been kind of excluded from normal feminism. So he's a pretty smart guy. He's a pretty smart guy. Hagbert says, went, work, whatever. He's future Nixon.
Today, I spent some time outside in the yard with my son, building some gardening furniture and fixtures for the backyard. Kids are on spring break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've been trying to learn. One day we want to be out of the city, and the timing isn't right for that just yet. So until we can do that, we've decided to make our backyard into a farm. And so we're building all kinds of fixtures and chicken coops and getting hens.
Wait, how many chicken coops are you making?
Well, sorry, chicken coop,
Okay.
singular.
Oh, see, he's trying to get back into the good graces of Mr. Timothy Poole. Tim Poole, if you guys don't know, he has just a constant live feed into a chicken coop. I think he calls it Chicken City. So Jack's like, he's been paying attention. He's been working and watching in the background. He's like, when he makes his glorious return to Timcast IRL, which I suppose will give us Alpha Cuck 4, perhaps, he'll be ready. He'll have something to talk about to be able to deflect from the conversation that the chat is going to be demanding.
And getting a handful of hens and just doing it in the backyard, even though we're like right smack dab in the middle of the city. But it's fun, man. You get the kids out there. And, other than that, man, I'm back to doing all the normal things, man. All the normal things, working with the Liminal Order, doing a podcast, working with my guys.
Who have you been interviewing on your podcast?
I just had Jordan Hall on the other day, and before that, John Robb. And I've got one in the can with Jeffrey Miller, and I've got Luke Burgess coming up to talk about his book Wanting, about Rene Girard and mimetic signaling and mimetic contagion, which is very timely. And it's good, man. I continue to do the deep dive stuff, which was really my interest in the first place.
Oh yeah, he definitely likes a deep dive. As we've seen videos and footage of, the man likes a deep dive. He truly does, You know what I mean?
Yes, younger sons, definitely. Young boys. I do like fucking college boys. Right, my tight little assholes. Oh.
Whoa.
Doing the deep dives, heavy, high level stuff, some abstract, some practical. But really, like the best part about it was just reading a great book and thinking, man, I want to talk to the author, and then having the luxury of being able to talk to him for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And pick their brain.
Yeah.
You read and I'm like, hey, I got a question here. Oh, you just write it down.
Yeah.
Get 2 hours with them. It's been great. And leading up to that, last year we had on Alexander Dugin right before all this craziness went down with Ukraine and Russia. So, we've been digging into the
Yeah, you can tell he's very interested in this information. He's like, oh yeah, that's really something, old Jack. That's something, John Goldman. This is some really interesting stuff.
important hot topics
Yeah.
on a deep level for a while.
You've had Millerman on. I spoke with Millerman, and he's the Dugan scholar.
He is.
Yeah.
He's the leading English scholar, English-speaking scholar on Dugan for sure.
And I didn't get a really good, and I haven't read Dugan, so I didn't get a really good grasp on Dugan's philosophy. It was very different. It seemed like very different than anything I had encountered. It's very, not necessarily anti-liberal or anti-Western, but it seems kind of like it goes in that way. It's very critical.
No, 100%. 100% anti-liberal, but also
Yeah, no, Dugan is very anti-liberal. He's about reestablishing the greatness of Eurasia in kind of a more authoritarian sense, taking it back, kind of promoting traditional values, getting away from the corruption of the West. It's kind of almost like it's very like traditional Muslims, That's how they kind of feel too.
100% anti. I'm not a Duganist. I'm a student, right? I've studied and learned and read and talked to him as a way to understand one of the world's most interesting men, because he's a thinker of influence. And if you want to know what's happening and why things are happening, then you got to know. You got to learn. You can't just block it out and be like la la la.
Yeah.
So he's anti-liberal, anti-fascist, anti-communist. And he's trying to come up with a fourth way that is neither of those three things.
Did you get a sense of that fourth way? What it's comprised of or anchored by?
Yes, it's anchored by a Heidegger's concept of Dasein, which is, if I believe, and I'm not a Heideggerian nor a scholar, and this is one of the most complicated concepts in all
Look at him. He's laughing at him. He's laughing at him. Just kidding.
philosophy. But my layman's take is that it's the state of being before one is even aware of oneself. And from there, he extrapolates from unique individuality of everyone's Dasein to great civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
And he respects and says he respects, and there's continuity and symmetry throughout his thinking. It's congruent, rather. That he believes in the unique individual Dasein of each person, and then collectives, and then civilizations, and then
It's like this is like Ayn Rand objectivism. It's where you support the ego of the greatest amongst you, because if they are successful, then your culture will be successful. But you take it from a kind of an individualistic perspective. If you don't know Ayn Rand, you should check her out. She's an author, kind of the godmother of libertarianism to a certain degree, to one degree or another. Not totally, but they call a lot from Ayn Rand.
and their large spaces that they control. And in his model, he makes space for the United States and for Persia and China and the West.
So Dasein is
now,
kind of like the character, the spirit, the soul, the personality, kind of.
the most elemental, fundamental part of being. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, Heidegger's complicated stuff. Even
Just a
the
bit.
most sophisticated Western philosophers are like, and then I really got to get to Heidegger at some point.
Well, you can't interview him though. He's out. He's out of the
but just
podcast
even
circuit.
trying to grasp, he's off the podcast.
This guy, he's trying to play coy. He says he can't interview Heidegger. Well, let him in on some of your future tech there, Futurama guy. Come on now. He's just a Matt Groening clone. He's just thinner. He's just thinner.
Yeah, from what I hear.
he is indeed. But Dugan is a Heideggerian, and he has built a congruent political philosophy off of a concept of philosophy that is well respected and regarded by a lot of people who are in the biz. And I was really intrigued by talking to Dugan because of the same reason, well, not exactly the same, but similar reasons as
They're not really mentioning it, but Dugan is part of Putin's, basically his cabinet. He's like his philosophical religious advisor, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if those are the right terms, but that seems the function that he plays, in layman's terms.
to why I'm interested in learning about Jeffersonian or Hamiltonian philosophy, because they created a political philosophy and then they created an actual political
Implementation. Yeah.
space, an actual implementation based in their political philosophy that informed their decision making. And they have done the same thing there in Russia. They've taken, the evolution of Western metaphysics into Heidegger, and they've created a political philosophy based on that. And now they're implementing their political vision. I'm not a supporter of the war. I don't think killing is good. I pushed the wrong button there. I don't think.
Was that your killing is not good?
Yeah, it was a Freudian slip. This guy loves it. This guy's a Putin lapdog. Not really.
That's
Pokemon
right, exactly.
found or something.
Right, exactly. That's one of the presets on the Podcaster Pro. I just knocked it with my finger. And it's good to understand how people build political spaces based on political philosophy that has a root in the conversation of Western metaphysics. So it's relevant and it's exciting. And that those kind of conversations that I've had on the podcast are the things that are most exciting to me.
Jordan Hall does a lot of meta thinking. Does that overlap with what we were talking about with the design and trying to find a fourth way, or trying to get a grasp on the political and social order? No.
When are they going to talk about the dildos? When are they going to talk about the dildos? This is all kind of fascinating to one degree or another, but I gotta hear about this hot fuck action to the max, Ben.
I think if we dissect a few of the questions you just asked there out, we can say yes to one of them, which is trying to understand the current political and social order and trying to understand on a meta level what is happening. Jordan believes that the advent of social media and the internet and globalization, etc., is as fundamental a change as the printing press or fire or the wheel. And we're going through an incredible transition period, a liminal state, if you were.
Oh yeah, a liminal state, just like his liminal order, with this eye of Ra behind here. Oh yeah,
in such a way that we don't know really where it's going, and the only thing that we could do is try to look at the signs, and try to get a sense of what's emerging, because the social coherence has been thrown out the window, and we're not operating on the same page. We're not all getting top-down direction. He was one of the first people to put together the concept, the blue church concept, and he wrote an article back in 2015 or 16 that was profoundly impactful on me.
Blue church?
Yeah, blue church, red religion.
Oh.
The blue church being the top-down centralized information structure that created resonance and group coherence. And that was controlled. Think Walter Cronkite, think the professor at the front of the classroom, one to many, broadcast of one to many. And then the ability for the many to broadcast to the many has disrupted our group coherence. And now we're all out of phase and searching for our own truths, and who knows what's going to come out of it, because we're in a state of flux. We're in the adaptive valley, as the Weinsteins might say.
It's very
I'd say I would probably agree with what he just said there, that we are out of step. This kind of the selfish need to find life on your own terms to a certain degree, while ignoring objective reality, putting yourself first.
Stochastic, that's for certain.
It certainly is, man. Whew.
And even the internet, I was thinking about the evolution of how I came into being as an internet persona, because there's Benjamin Boyce and then there's Benjamin Boyce out in the
it's not the same. You're not 100% congruent.
Well, no, because the camera doesn't get.
So they're like, this is Jack. He feels like this is his moment. He's like, oh, so you have a secret life, a secret hidden life. You're not the same person as the one you present to the public. Well, I don't know if Benjamin Boyce is like kind of in the same business as you are, Jack. He's not a mentor. He's not giving people, moral advice.
Catch everything, and I keep I keep grounded outside of here, and I'm aware that I produce who I am, right? I produce who I am to other people, and then the parasocial relationships that happen on top of that. But I was thinking about how the IDW so-called was interesting, or a particular moment in time where a certain sort of communication over the internet became legitimate, or legitimate seeming, where you have these big names that are not just big names in the numbers, but there was this kind of turn into the normie land where a lot of the internet was just joking around and shit posting and trolling and, just expressing things and sharing things. But
Well, that was the surface of the internet. That's what people use social media for. And once the ushering in of the intellectual dark web, people like Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers, Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, they became mainstream. They became surface level. Honestly, you could kind of maybe even point to them and their popularity as being part of like kind of the divisive nature of what happened with people. Suddenly everybody was a deep thinker. Suddenly everybody wanted to tell you how to live your life and what was right and what was wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. Honestly, for me, it was a good thing. I think it was a good thing for me, like people like Jordan Peterson and whatnot, when I was a young man, when I was in my mid-20s. But it is what it is, I guess.
The podcast circuit, and then and then YouTube too. There was just it was very plebeian and just kind of pickup stuff, and then with around the IDW stuff, it became apparent that there's legitimate conversations happening in this space outside of the mainstream narrative. There are very valid, and respectable people communicating. But we sit, and I'm connected to that. I kind of try to do higher brow stuff, but I'm still riding a wave of a lot of just, just stuff and just people generating content and trolling each other, and the less respectable kind of stuff that I play with, but I can't get into because I have to stay in a certain level of respectability. So I'm just thinking about that as in the same.
So he's kind of like James Lindsay. Do you know who James Lindsay is? He's kind of like James Lindsay if James Lindsay wasn't a shit posting troll on the internet. James Lindsay does a lot of good work. And you could maybe even say that he undermines it a little bit by his behavior on social media platforms. I mean, I think it's funny. I think it's good, but I also understand that it limits like his message and the things he has to say, his warnings about what is happening in the education system and whatnot.
Fans are kind of sifting. Like it is really a mix-up, but there are just kind of tiers of discourse that are happening that are off the gatekeeped, blue churched path, right?
Sure.
And every
It's
once in
been
a while they
interesting.
blow up into each other, and they kind of go down and up and stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. The IDW moments was a good one because it legitimized actual intellectual sense making on the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And it brought people together who may have not actually come together in person, or had they done so, it would have been at some nerdy conference that nobody else went to or heard of, and there was maybe a recording of it that got translated, transcribed later.
I mean, he's right about this because most of that kind of stuff was kind of sequestered off in intellectual halls and stuff like that. Like I said, like nerdy kind of philosophy nerds and stuff like that. But then, it kind of blew up. People like Jordan Peterson, or Jordan Peterson mostly. I mean, that guy sells out giant rooms, thousands of people. And it's not cheap to go to these things. We're talking a couple $100 a pop. Kind of just popularized the idea of being intellectual.
It brought sense making because nobody really knows, right? Nobody really knows where we're going or what's going to happen. There's not like a finite plan. There's not a step-by-step, path that we're following.
Actually, the person that's probably really responsible for that stuff blowing up, and I have a feeling they're not going to mention it, but it's probably Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan platforming these people made them massive. Like Jordan Peterson would not have had that career that he's had in the past 5 or 6 years if it wasn't for Joe Rogan, for sure.
following.
Come on, Biden knows what's going to happen. They have it all figured it out.
So putting your effort and energy into making sense of the world and collaborating with other people who are doing the same, and exploring and expressing ideas and trying to have some coalesce and see what what the group sort of comes to an agreement on, what consensus may be, is exceptionally valuable. And it's not only just valuable in the sense of we need it for the universe, we need it for ourselves. It's fun too. There's like utility to it, and it's a way to engage intellectually that I don't know that was available previous.
But even though it is in
Hagbard says, on the other hand, it's got people sucking on the tit of Ann Applebaum's 3-letter agency messaging. You're not wrong, right? Because those people suddenly they were able to position themselves as authorities, and they got to set trends and what was interesting. I mean, they've always tried to do that. That's always been like that, but they had a higher profile. And they're working in concert with social media platforms to be the only voices, the only authorities.
Intellectual, it's still entertainment. It's still fundamentally entertainment. It's fundamentally stimulation. People are attracted to these different personalities because they like them or they are entertained by them, even though there is sense making, this legitimate kind of important.
Hagbard said Sam Harris holds her up as the be all end all. I know. It's fucking ridiculous. And that's the thing that's so irritating about somebody like Sam Harris. For every good thing that he says or every good position he has like 2 that are awful and that are short-sighted and pedantic and insular. It's just kind of a reflection of that bubble that he exists in and that he likes to promote. Like, he wants to be on the inside. He wants to be a cool guy. He thinks that means that he's cool if he's on the inside track with these types of people, these types of serious people. And it's and like, Sam Harris was actually pretty interesting, I would say, up until like sometime in after when Trump was elected. Like, he just got Trump derangement syndrome and just kind of lost all rational, objective sense. Like, whether he liked them or not is really, liked Trump or not, should be irrelevant to his project. Hagbard says, define the. I don't know. I'll let you guys speculate. I'll let you speculate.
Work going on. Still, fundamentally, Brett Weinstein's an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. You're an entertainer. We have to attract, keep, maintain, and then change attention. Like we're still in this attention economy. So I think it's happening within the framework of entertainment. And I don't think entertainment, I'm using entertainment as very broad, as in just things that people pay attention to. It's not like in a classroom where you're paying to get a skill, right? Where it's kind of pared down and kind of more legitimate, more structured, more exclusive because you have to pay and then you get a credit out of it. It should be more utilitarian, but pedagogy is changing over time to be more entertaining now because the kids don't pay attention to anything that's not entertaining, right? So it's all in the bubble of
see, Benjamin Boyce is kind of alluding to the fact that he's a little bit of a gatekeeper. I think there is a fine line between like valuable information and entertainment. But if you can do both, that's a good thing. And the more that the public has access to these ideas, the better. That's the great thing about the internet. It made these things, it democratized this stuff. It made it ubiquitous. You don't have to go to a college anymore to get access to this information or study these things. It's all available to you. And you get to decide how serious you want to take it or not, which I think is a good thing overall. It's a net positive, even if you have to deal with some bullshit in the midst of it.
Attracting, keeping, and then changing attention.
I think there's a part of me that recoils from the idea of the entertainment, but then I think, okay, there in the old days, people.
He recoils from the concept of entertainment. That's because you take yourself too seriously, and which is part of Jack Murphy's whole problem. This is part of John Goldman's problem. is that maybe he takes himself and what he does a little bit too seriously. He doesn't have perspective on where he's at. He's not like some sort of like global phenomenon. He's not some sort of like well-known person outside of the internet. He's basically a cast member on Timcast IRL. That's where most people know him from. I mean, if he's been on Timcast IRL, like, I don't know, like 30 times. Right now, he's got 42 point something 42.6, I think, K subs or something like that. Before his incident, he had like 52. But like, it doesn't necessarily automatically translate into followers or views just because you're on that show, because most people kind of only accept you or are aware of you in the confines of Timcast. And so that's what he is to most people. And if he had more perspective, maybe he would loosen up a little bit. A little bit. I mean, that's what all this trouble for him started with. He just couldn't loosen up. He couldn't just accept it. He couldn't just roll with the punches.
I don't watch TV. I just watch PBS, right? There's like tiers to it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So sure, it's entertainment in the sense that you need to capture people's attention. I feel like I've tried to put out a signal and just use that as a way to attract people. And in fact, and maybe this is where we're going here, but I feel like I accidentally spilled over into the more entertainment-y part of the universe that I didn't really.
Is he talking about Chatterbait? 69 for 69, guys. Come on.
know that I was getting in there, and I didn't really want to be there, right? Because I'm a writer first. I'm a creative first. I've been a musician. I've always written. I've got literally stacks of leather-bound journals filled with notes and scribbles, and I've written a book, and I've written 100 blog articles and whatever.
So back in the day when he was writing his Cuck articles, his BDSM stuff, his manosphere stuff, was he like, was he wanting to be, was that not entertainment? I feel like he's going to contradict himself. He's going to say that stuff was for fun. He's going to. So I don't even understand why he goes down this road. Prophet says he couldn't loosen up, but his wife sure could. Hey now. Yeah, but you see the size of that dildo that he shoved up his ass? That was a formidable opponent for his anus.
I have an uncontrollable urge to just express myself creatively. So I have been producing it. I have been putting it out. I mean, I released a record once that sold like 50 whole copies, and I think I probably gave them all away.
Was it like a comedy record? You were like drunk on like 4th Street bar or something, and somebody recorded it?
My first underground dance record, man, back in the 90s.
Wait, a dance record?
Yeah, man. I was a DJ and a producer.
Okay.
And I eventually did some good foreplay work. But yeah, my first one,
Of course he was. Of course he was a DJ. See, that's how he got introduced to the lifestyle, as they call it, in the business.
put a studio together, and this is back when you could only do 8-second samples, and that was crazy. You could record 8 seconds digitally. Holy cow.
So is there something like similar to it, like in the genre of dance music? Like what kind of dance?
Like house music.
Okay. Oh, so just you're at a party and a lot of beats.
Yeah, like DJ nightclub stuff.
Okay.
And
Groove is in the heart. Yeah. Stuff like that,
so this was, early 90s, right? So I guess the first time I went out to a club like that was like 92. And by 96, I was a professional.
I was wearing leather daddy gear and having hooks. I had a whole belt, a utility belt full of different size hooks for whatever ladies or college age boys I may find.
Professional DJ. I was traveling around the country playing records.
Oh wow.
So I just have this, like I said, and I cannot stop producing creatively. It just comes out. So I think that the interviews, the podcast, and things like that is just me pursuing my
things like that, like Chatterbait. He's a performer. He's an exhibitionist, a performance artist. It all started. This all tracks back to him being a mid-90s DJ, a dance club DJ.
like inevitable desire to create and to be inquisitive. The idea to turn myself into a brand or like attract people through a created persona never crossed my mind.
That's not true. That's not true. Okay. When we go back to his early blogs, you know, like what is it? Feminist women need to be raped or want to be raped. Things like that. The Cuck article, the one that started all this business. That's definitely what he was doing. Like, I have a feeling he's going to say, like, well, you know, I didn't really mean it. And it wasn't meant for public consumption. Really, I thought maybe 5 people would read it. But he was trying to attract the attention of other manosphere type dudes. Mike Cernovich being one of them. That was the big one that would come up often in his old articles. He loves Mike Cernovich. He loves him dearly.
I mean, the notion of personal branding certainly did, but to create something that wasn't me, probably not. But is it 100% of me? Absolutely not. Right? It's only a fraction of who you are as a person.
But we all have to learn this sooner or later, that once you cross the threshold from being a creator to being somebody on the stage, you are a commodity. Like Jack Murphy becomes a commodity. You become a token. And then what happens?
Yeah, he becomes a monolith, but it's a monolith of your own creation. So he understood that he became a monolith. He represented something. That's what the liminal order is. That's what he talks about, the liminal order, and getting people to try to join into this liminal order. That's what he wants. That's what he's looking for. That's what he's trying to achieve. Like, he's not like he's just like, it's like almost a form of just like, it's a lack of self-awareness or maybe denial, whatever you want to call it.
So that token, it depends on a lot of different things, but it's different than you. You created that projections, like the bat signal, like you threw out the bat signal, right? And you're like, this is what I'm doing, you know, but once you project it onto the, what Plato's cave, then it's kind of different than you, right? And then the audience, especially in the Red Religion days where everybody's making content, there's a lot of people looking for a lot of content, and they don't have I try to not use people as content, because I know that, you know, even though it is a persona, I'm not going to turn it into a content, because I try to respect the human being on the other side of that. Other people won't do that. And so it's just like what happened to you last year was that, like, you were on this tier of intellectualizing and inquisitiveness and creative, and then there was a surge from another level. There was just a huge surge. It's like phenomenal. I just have to say this, like the Beirut explosion that happened a couple of years ago, just like
okay, I saw this. This is actually pretty funny.
Complete. Just
Hagbert says this guy pushing a personal brand about masculinity and whatever seems awful averse to any kind of work that might build the callus. That's true, maybe. For sure. Well, he's a writer. He's a writer, Hagbert. Okay? He's a creative. Deep down inside.
This huge thing.
But he's building chicken coops now with his kids. Okay? He's a serious person.
And it's very rare for somebody to be at the epicenter of that. So I don't know how you get through that, how you manage that, and then you don't have any control for a period of time. You don't have any control until the attention goes away. You have no control over that narrative. So that Jack Murphy that they're talking about is different than you, but it's still what you created, you put out there.
Sure. Yeah, you know, that happened by accident, man. You know, okay, you got to decide, you got to separate between what did I put out into the universe, what was I intending to do, and what was in the forethought of my thinking, which is interview high-level thinkers, drill down on their subjects, study philosophy. I mean, last summer I did a Claremont fellowship, but it was like one of the most exciting things I ever did. And it's like, we called it, you know, I called it NIGHTCAP. I mean, basically we were just reading philosophy and history and sit around talking about it for 8 days in a nice hotel.
Okay, sure. Hagbert says, so is Larry Hahn, Saint Larry Hahn.
What happened, and I wasn't expecting, was that, you know, I was the first podcast guest on Tim Pool's IRL, like his nighttime show. I was the very first guest he ever had.
Hey, Logan's over on a Odyssey. What's going on, Logan? He says, "Imagine if this guy's beard was on his head instead." Well, then he would. I mean, he doesn't want to put people at too much of a disadvantage. This is a way for him to kind of, cripple himself a little bit. This guy's apex level. He's apex level, and he wants to give the plebeians a chance. This guy had a full head of hair. What hope would we have? What hope would we have in the face of the Murphinator?
And that was back in 2019. And he just kept saying, "Hey, you want to come back? Sure, I'll come back." And as I kept going back, his show just exploded, right? It just went from being Tim Pool, a guy who talks about the news, having a podcast he's trying out at night, to being Tim Pool being bigger than CNN, right? And it just happened as I was a regular guest. I mean, I'd like to think.
Yeah, of course. He didn't keep going back there for the exposure for his own projects. Of course not. How could I see this coming? Of course you did. I mean, I don't understand why it's so difficult for this dude to just admit that. There's a part of going on that show. You do it to build your brand for exposure. He's like, "Well, I just didn't know what was going on." When Jack Murphy went on that show, I think the first time Tim Pool was over 100 episodes deep, he already had an audience that was tuning in to the tune of 10, 15, 30,000 people every night. So he didn't come in. He didn't come in at some sort of nascent stage where nobody was watching it and he had no idea what would happen. Come on, Jack. Come on.
I contributed some minor, fractional, tiny part of it. But
no, you did not. Why would he think that he contributed to it? He contributed it in the sense that he was a guest, and Tim Cast IRL basically lives and dies based on the quality of guests that are on there. I mean, when he says a fraction, he must mean a very small fraction. A very small one.
But I didn't know that I just in my head, I guess I wasn't aware. I wasn't being smart enough or savvy enough about it. But I just didn't know that I went from just hanging out with my friend Tim at his house, doing a show that 20,000 people or 30,000 people are watching, to being on primetime television where I get recognized walking down the street in any city that I go to. That was all unintentional. Right. So I ended up in that space unprepared for stardom, I guess, that I'd never really.
That'd be fair. If it scales up to a place that you don't understand or are not comfortable with, it probably would be a lot to deal with. I want to be fair to Murph. I want to be fair to Murphy here.
Was seeking, it just kind of happened. And looking back on it, I wish that I had a little bit more public relations training, or just thinking about it. And
I mean, he only had an entire career of real estate and working for a charter school with some interesting components to his time working for the charter schools. He did actually have a lot of public facing experience, more than he's letting on here.
Understanding the different stage that I was on.
Yeah.
Rather than just, being in my basement here interviewing people over the internet.
Well, you've been in different communities over your internet life. You were in the manosphere. Is that correct to say that you were participating in this thing called the manosphere? And
Definitely.
And that's kind of a very small, very niche community, more or less, right?
Yes.
So there's a different kind of relationship that you have with your audience, a smaller audience, very particular audience. And then the way that people are making connections in that space, and the status, not the game in a cynical sense, but just the way that status operates on that level is different, totally different than, where Tim ended up.
Yeah, because if you're part of the manosphere, it is niche, but it's bigger than you might expect. They all just suck your dick. No pun intended. But they're very self-congratulatory. It's a little incestuous. You say things they agree with, they're gonna worship you. You're a Chad. Full control, apex level. That's what he was going for. He goes on Tim Pool, and then he's exposed to a larger cross section of the country of different types of people. He was used to just interacting with people that thought he was awesome, thought he was cool. I mean, look at that beard. People saw this beard, they say, oh my God, we got a Viking here. We got a macho man. Woo.
With his thing and the connections that are going there, and then the amount of attention that's going on in there. And with that attention, it's compounded by there's not just more eyes, but there's more eyes watching those eyes, because then when something happens up there's a lot of people downstream of that want to play with the attention that happens, upstream with them. And so there's this huge surge when the levee broke in your case of like this older internet, this trollish kind of a non-internet, the older YouTube where people were just shit posting each other and trolling each other, and just a bunch of people in their basements just, finding material. And then
I don't understand why he describes like older YouTube as that, because it really wasn't that. There was not, I mean, there are parts of the internet obviously that are very anonymous and they kind of thrive on that anonymity, but like especially YouTube, not really, not so much. There was a lot of fun being had. There was a lot of things like that, but there was also just people who felt comfortable or free to kind of express themselves with their names attached to it. That was kind of the norm. Like you could be kind of intense. You could be a little spicy back when he's talking, because he's talking about like 2010 to 2014, basically.
And this more legitimate or more astute YouTube that has come over time with more attention, and then Tim Pool and other voices cultivating.
Those things were always there. They were always there. They probably just didn't have the ubiquity. They probably just didn't have the size of audience, but that kind of stuff was always there. And that's what it was always one of the cool things about YouTube, because you could go watch silly memes and shit posters and drama channels, and also listen to dissertations on philosophy and history and religion.
A space for a different type of attention there, and that's where there was a collapse.
Like this dude they just weren't plugged in. They just weren't doing it because he was in college. He was very high-minded, and he thought he was doing the serious work, the serious business. Jack was, I don't know, defrauding a charter school, being a DJ at night, being a cuck. They just didn't have time. They didn't have the time.
Collapse of worlds back into a previous generation of the internet, from what I see.
Yeah, my internet life has been pretty wild, man. Look, I started on the Manosphere forums back in 2007 or 8 as just anonymous reader, whatever. Then maybe I started posting on the forums, and I met some really great guys on those forums back then. Guys that I still know today, guys that have matured and grown out of all that nonsense and are 15 years on in life that are friends of mine still. And I was totally anonymous. I didn't even know what Twitter was. I followed one of my friends from the forums onto Twitter, and we just started writing with, Jack Murphy is sort of my name. It's half my name. My name is John Murphy Goldman. I'm named after my grandfather, Jack Murphy, John Murphy. So it's like my name, but it's not my name, but it is my name. And so I use Jack Murphy as sort of a pseudonym, but not really me. And so I was operating in like a non-space.
Yeah.
And then in this like edgy, just say whatever you want. We're just talking shit. Like nobody's really listening. Right. It's
well, because there was a time where, just like I said, people felt comfortable, more comfortable shit posting, being a little edgy.
like a small, totally small community, hundreds maybe of people, maybe thousands of people. And you'd get 100 views or something, and you'd be like, sweet, that was awesome. And then I got doxxed in 2018, and so that's when my personal life and the pseudonymous life got collapsed.
Yeah.
And so that's when
he got doxxed as a result of what was happening with the charter schools. That's how he gets doxxed. And then that article from, I think it was 2016, like the Cuck article and the rape article, that's when they kind of surfaced. and he was kind of taken to task for it.
That's when my like upstanding, normal, white collar professional job of being a charter school executive
There you go.
and working for a charter school advisor, like a regulatory body, that got collapsed with shit posting manosphere world, where you're just saying things to get a rise out of people. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. It's just fun. We're having fun.
So maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. Well, as further history would show, he definitely did believe at least some of that stuff. Specifically the Cuck article, which, if you want to hear, I actually did a rendition of it, a dramatic reading of it on the first Jack Murphy stream we did called Alpha Cuck. It was very beautiful.
And then all of a sudden, that's like, boy, everything you said back then in 2015 is that's your gospel truth, and that's who you are. Yeah. And so that's, then, so I got fired out of my job then. And at that time, man,
and by the way, I disagree with him being doxxed and fired for internet bullshit. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a healthy thing for culture in general. I think people should be able to let off steam. I think people should be able to be silly and satirical and make edgy jokes and not kind of suffer real life ramifications, for lack of a better way to put it. I don't think you should have to suffer that, because it's kind of just, even like he said, it's like, it's not always real. Sometimes it's just fun. It's just a way to blow off steam, like I said.
Prospects for like re-entering the normie.
Logan over on Odyssey says more like jack off Murphy.
Professional world seemed pretty dim when you're called a racist, Nazi, whatever. And some of your posts that you think are just fun, anonymous, half true, maybe all true, whatever, not meant for public consumption.
Half true, maybe all true. Who knows? Who can say? Well, we can say, at least we can say for one of them, for one of the articles, we could say it was totally true. And you can go check out Alpha Cuck 2. Alpha Cuck 2. We covered all that stuff.
Shouldn't really, because nobody's listening, get tacked on to your LinkedIn profile. It's tough. And so at that time, I just was like, okay, I have a small, like single digit thousands Twitter following. Like, well, let me see what I can do with this. And so I rode with Jack Murphy. And so Jack Murphy's dragging with it things from the original doxing, some other things that happened. Mm-hmm. And I go from in this like niche manosphere place, which is really a place that only you should pass through if you need to. It's not a place where everybody should go, and it's definitely not a place for anybody to stay, right? It's a phase in life, brief one at that, hopefully. And I guess
I don't know, do you get like really hardcore personally invested in the manosphere in your 40s? In your 40s, like, I know life is a constant process of change and evolution and maturity. But if you're like 40, I'm 35. I feel like I am, for better or worse, I'm pretty close to the person that I'm always going to be. I'm always open to changing, etc. But if you're getting involved in that stuff in your 30s and 40s, it may be an indication of a deeper substrate, something deeper down inside. Maybe some real deeply held beliefs rather.
Hard work and diligence and being, I think, respectable voice, asking good questions, a voracious consumer of the right kind of content, putting it together, synthesizing it, and like being very diligent about the podcast guests that I've asked to come on. In just a matter of years, I go from being an anonymous shitposter in the manosphere to interviewing the the chief of staff of the Department of the Defense and world.
He should thank Tim Pool right here. He should be like, Timothy Pool, thank you.
Leading philosophers and top academics in the world, and it's crazy actually when you really think about it.
Yeah, no, not to lose the thread, but it goes back to what we're saying about like the information landscape, or the information exchange landscape, and how that it's not just information, it's persona, it's the human being, and the way that you can do a transit from a tiny little, subreddit into, an actual legitimate voice, or a voice that's speaking to people who have power in the real world, is you don't know how short the distance is between those two places. And so you don't know how to scale your behavior, or how you reconcile behavior that's, I'm not going to say appropriate, but attenuated to this environment, to a completely different environment with a different set of rules, or consequences, let's say. And then how
the difference between being like having a small amount of notoriety and a large amount of notoriety. The higher your profile raises, the more people expect of you, the more people interrogate your intentions.
how do we go back and see the human being as somebody who can change over time and understand the propriety of these different environments? Or do we always have to be constantly have our nose clean, or constantly anonymous? Is that the only other option? Or is there a way for us to understand how human beings operate in this brave new world?
Yeah, into how you contextualize your behavior. So I used to call this platform power and platform responsibility. Like, as the platform grows, you have different responsibilities. The things that you can say when you've got 50 Twitter followers or a blog that no one reads for fun is entirely different than what you can and should be saying if you have 150,000 followers and millions of people are watching what you're doing and saying. I think that's true. And you comport yourself differently in the privacy of your own home, and then with your family, and then with your community. I mean, sure, there's congruent value system, but you still it's like.
So he just brought up, he says, sure, there's a congruent value system, which is the thing that I think most people had a problem with. If you're selling a product, if you're selling yourself as a product through the liminal order, whatever, like, people have kind of a monolithic perspective on who Jack Murphy is. And if he's not privately living up to that standard, to those values, then people feel like they've been lied to. They've been hoodwinked. Especially when it comes to shit like this, like his project, which I don't even think is like necessarily on its face a bad thing. This idea that you have a community of people, a community of men that are there to support each other and to try to build businesses and do well for themselves and their families. Like, the idea sounds totally fine. I mean, it's like the Masons or something. But unfortunately, even the liminal order, if people don't know, was it was corrupted pretty early on, because they had a lot of people like Jack Murphy. He would allow people that were like him, that sold lifestyle, that sold some form of education, to be part of the liminal order, and they were there to try to find customers. Like, hey, pay me $600 for this philosophy course. Hey, pay me $500 so you can be part of this study, be part of this book club. That apparently that was a lot of what went on in there. So that's why people kind of accuse him of grifting, even by proxy.
Come home and you take your shoes off, right? Like, that's, if you're at your home on the internet and you can take your shoes off, and you do, well, that's great. But the trail is permanent. The trail is permanent, and when you do move from one space, I like how you said that, how like the distance can be very short. I think that I'm a interesting example of how short it can be, and the perils that come along with it. But I can't. A little tangent here. I can't separate in my mind what I should or shouldn't have done differently. Yes, I know there are a lot of things I wish I didn't do. But then again, were the things that I shouldn't have done the ones that shorten that distance? It's like the things that you do or say get you to where you want to go, but then you regret having done or said them. I can't sometimes separate the two. Yeah.
Well, you could reverse engineer it by you can go through action by action, but I mean the explosiveness again, I go back to that Beirut explosion. Do you remember that when that happened?
Which
It
one?
was 2019 or 2020. There was this something exploded on the dock, and it was modern day
that one. Okay.
Beirut. So there's 40 or 50 cell phone footage of this huge explosion, and
Sure.
then later on, a bunch of damage, just phenomenal thing to watch. But you're like, what happened? And then some company in Britain, I think it is in Britain, did a beautiful reconstruction. They took it all together, they figured all the photos, and they went down to that warehouse, and they figured out what was in that warehouse, what happened. And the warehouse had created a bomb without knowing it. They had a bunch of fertilizer, a bunch of tires, and then a bunch of fireworks. It was a perfect bomb. It was this huge bomb. And they didn't, there was, people were warning about that, but nobody knew that that was going to happen. So, and to make a metaphor for your case, like there was the explosion. There's a lot of very intense material that just grabbed attention to it. Phenomenal. Like just.
So he's saying that the background of John Goldman's life, the things that were in the warehouse were a perfect bomb, just ready to explode at any time. A perfect bomb. I like the way he's putting it though, because it becomes disarming. He's like acting as a metaphor, allegory. Jack is going to just go along with this because I think of the framing. Good on you, Benjamin Boyce. You smart fella. Totally college educated, this guy.
Sorry to say, phenomenal. Pow. But then you're like, how did that bomb get built? And what were the different things? How were they put together? And to what degree is that something that we can learn from on how to create, be more intentional in how we create ourselves in the internet, and understand to what degree we can go from one place to another, and what's going to stick with us, what doesn't stick with us, what's important, what's valuable to the audience, what do people want, necessarily need to know about us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like forensically, you created a bomb that collapsed the world. It collapsed the world's attention, not on the level of Will Smith getting slapping Chris Rock, but that that was like one moment where one thing happened. It shook the world. Everybody looks at this thing for 1 day, 2 days, right? You're every once in a while we get like, it's like the lottery. We get put in that place, and you're like, what happened there? And the weird thing about the internet is that everybody picks it apart, and then everybody theorizes about all these different things. There's forum threads just trying to figure out, who is this guy? CIA, they're calling you like a glowy. I don't even know what a glowy is or what that means,
Oh, I'm sure he doesn't. But what he's talking about is Kiwi Farms. And actually, I think at some point in this interview, he actually cops to reading through the Kiwi Farms thread, which is very comprehensive, about 270 or 207 rather pages deep at this point. But the thing is, I'm curious if they get into it, like, is that it's not what happened. Like, when he was rude to Sydney Watson from You Are Here, that was like one step. And most of what happened afterwards was a result of his reaction to it. Like, I mean, maybe what he says is true, right? He just was not ready for that. He wasn't ready for that kind of attention, or the way that side of the internet operates. He just wasn't prepared for it because he reacted very poorly. And people were able to get information, even behind the scenes information, of him reacting poorly. At some point, like, he was talking to the Liminal Order guys in their private chats about, seeking vengeance, about trying to get like Sydney Watson fired, and contacting Glenn Beck and getting a lawyer and suing people, etc. And then people, the larger public, found out about that, and that just kept the train a-rolling. It's like he was shoveling coal into a train that was headed straight for his life. Foolhardy.
And I don't want to back you in the corner. You don't have to answer any of these questions. It's just that you attracted so much attention in such a phenomenal short amount of time that I don't know how one deals with that, and then how one kind of figures out the rubble, reconstructs it, and then moves on from them. Right.
I think that's a fair position. Because no matter, like I said, like a lot of what exacerbated things was his reaction. But if you're like a normal person that's not used to that kind of attention or people looking at you that way, I mean, how would you react? How would you react if you have that many skeletons in your closet? You had all these kinds of things, and then you tried to like change your life. You're trying to change it for the better. You're trying to be positive, and then people are not going to let go of this past existence, these things that you used to do. Well, how do you reconcile that? You know, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I hope it never happens to me. Thankfully, I only have maybe one. I got like maybe a rib cage in a closet. I don't have a full skeleton.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good questions in there and a lot to think about. The attention, it was a bomb, and you know there. I tried, speaking in generalities here, I tried to clean up some of my history, and I thought I had done a decent job, but I guess I hadn't. Things were stored in Russian bit torrents and in places that this is what people.
Hold on. Look at Benjamin's eyes. Let's look at his eyes a little bit. When he says Russian BitTorrents, he's like, "Oh."
Well, there's a lot of good questions in there and a lot to think about. The attention, it was a bomb, and you know there. I tried, speaking in generalities here, I tried to clean up some of my history, and I thought I had done a decent job, but I guess I hadn't. Things were stored in Russian bit torrents and.
Oh, he's like, "Oh, what's going on now?" Russian BitTorrents. He's over opening this conversation talking about Dugan. Have we uncovered something unsavory? That's a joke, everybody. But I like how he's just like, "Whoa."
In places that this is what people are telling me, that I just had no idea to even look. No idea. All the casual searching, your regular Google searches, 20 pages deep, whatever. I thought I had done a pretty good job because I realized I had gone from one universe to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that I was gonna. Nobody told me I was gonna be like famous, right? Nobody told me I would walk down the street in any city in America and have somebody walk up to me and be like, "Hey, you Jack Murphy." Walking on the trails of Bryce Canyon with my kids. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like crazy. I had no idea. And I did know in the back of my mind, it was always kind of lingering. Like, okay, there's a bomb here, perhaps. And it happened. I turned the internet off December 29th and didn't turn it back on again, basically, until February.
What kind of bomb could he be speaking about? What kind of bomb?
Yes, younger sons, definitely. Young boys. I do like fucking college boys. Right, my tight little assholes.
Quite the bomb. He's not wrong, That's a bomb.
And people tell me I was like top 10 trending Twitter in the United States, maybe even worldwide. It went so big and so bad that every single family member got doxxed. All my kids got doxxed. We've got death threats. We have open police investigations to the death threats. Just torrents and torrents and torrents of abuse.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely an aspect of the internet, mostly emanating from the manosphere, ironically, that really took this way to a place that was ridiculous, in the periphery, in the background. But what's the guy's name? There's a YouTube channel, I think Undead Chronic 4 or something like that. He was responsible for brigading the "You Are Here" chat and the super chats that led to the downfall of Jack Murphy. They already had turned against this dude. And they were really intense. I mean, like, as much as you like or dislike this dude or think what he's doing is a good thing or a bad thing, like fucking with his family and his kids, like, come on now. It's a little too indignant, a little too self-righteous for my taste, honestly.
I hate pictures of my house and address and details of all my immediate family members' lives, pick through it and pour it over and post it to the internet and totally disclosed in docs. And the question that I ask myself is why? Like, why did people care?
Because people like to see a hypocrite fail, or what they perceive to be a hypocrite. Just like Jack Murphy does. Like when he's talking, he's become a political pundit to a certain degree, especially through his time being on Timcast IRL, etc. Like, he criticizes people for being hypocrites. He likes to see when they engage in hypocrisy, when they fail. It's the same thing. It's the same impulse. But Jack Murphy is small enough of a personality or a presence that makes him a target that they can actually have an effect on. That people can actually affect. They can actually affect his life. They can't affect the life of like somebody like Mika Brzezinski or Jen Psaki or any political pundit on the news. They can't actually do anything to those people. But somebody like Jack Murphy, they can. So they do it. So they do what they're going to do.
I wasn't out there hurting anybody or breaking any laws, or in fact, you know me, I just had spent a year traveling the country hosting brunches so that people can come together and make friends with each other and build
brunches that cost upwards of $1,200, by the way. Just to put that out there. He was not just hosting brunches. That's a little disingenuous.
Community. And at the end of every single one, we did 16 events in 2021. And at the end of every single one, I was like, man, we are spreading joy. That's what we're doing. We're just bringing people together, giving them a little booze and a little food, and just letting them meet each other and make friends and connections and just spreading joy. And in the liminal order, we're just helping people get together to build businesses, to move their families, we can talk about that if you want, like amazing success stories with guys in the liminal order. Me going on Tim Pool.
Hagrid says expensive Elks Lodge. Exactly. Elks Lodge, the Masons, whatever you want to call it, the Knights of Columbus. Same kinds of things. Trying to have like a brotherhood, camaraderie. But for a price, you pay $1,200 to go eat Eggs Benedict and drink some mimosas.
He's like, hey, you want to come be the first guest on my show? I'm like, sure, that'll be fun. We didn't go on this show to get rich and famous. Tim didn't pay me anything, which is fine. It was great. I never asked for it. He never offered. It was fine. No complaints there. The question would be,
he didn't go there to be rich and famous. Probably true, right? If he had known Tim Pool just kind of privately, yeah, sure, dude, I'll be on your internet show, whatever. But then he kept going on. He saw how Tim Pool kind of went to the stratosphere, kind of blew up. Come on, he understood. He understood to at least a certain degree.
Why? Why were people, to me, why did people want to do this damage, to take such glee in it? And then the replication of it. I caught a few glimpses at the beginning there. There were just scores of people doing videos upon videos.
He didn't just catch a little bit at the beginning. He wasn't just peeking in. He was watching everything. Actually, there's a stream with, I don't know if people are familiar with it, Rekieta Law, Nick Rekieta, where he was sending him DMs on Twitter as he was live streaming talking about this event. He was very plugged into what was happening. I don't know, honestly, how could you not be? I mean, the world is coming down on you, for lack of a better way to put it. So I don't fault him for that, but he doesn't need to pretend like, well, I only kind of peeked in and then I disappeared. I don't think that ever really happened. He always had his ear to the internet stone.
Of repeaters, this guy did a video, so I'm doing a video about this guy, and I'm doing a video about that guy, right? Mm-hmm. And just people with clear agenda. And true, you're right. Calling me like I'm a Fed, or like I'm undercover, or I'm a Mossad agent, or
see, all these things this is obfuscation, because most people didn't. They were just laughing. I mean, he's probably talking about somebody like myself, right? I actually had a pretty, in terms of Zoobox numbers, I had a very good, successful meme, a Jack Murphy meme that I had made just as like an opening for a stream, like a bumper. And I posted it in isolation. It kind of blew up. It has like 52,000 views or something like that. I never made a dime off you, Jack. Never made a dime. Zoobox is not monetized. Probably never will be. We like to say what we like to say.
Like paid opposite. Like, bro, let me tell you, I am literally just a guy, I'm just a guy in Washington, D.C. who worked really hard and put out a bunch of content that people liked. I mean, that is the extent of my crime. To why that was such a driving force for people to take such glee and dude, I'm talking about millions.
Because, like I said, people like to point out hypocrisy. Like if you're selling yourself as a moral agent, as a masculine figure trying to guide young men specifically into the future, trying to give them something to look forward to hold on to develop into, and then they find out that you were like 69 for 69 or having your asshole licked, which, you know, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. And then you're on Chatterbait trying to get people to give you money only a few years before. It's not like this was 10, 15 years ago. We're talking about like a year, 2 years before this happened.
People, right? Like millions of people.
Yeah.
My buddy texted me, and he knows internet history as well or better than anybody. He says, literally, without a doubt, the most psychotic internet takedown I've ever seen. And I'm perplexed, honest.
Well, he is kind of unique. I'm struggling to think in my mind of somebody else that has suffered the throes that Jack Murphy has kind of suffered. The only person that comes to mind, and maybe it's just because it's happening kind of right now, is Ethan Ralph, which is a topic, is a subject I've kind of decided to never really venture into on Nightcap or on Zoobox because I don't want all that noise that comes with talking about that guy. But the difference is that Ethan Ralph just kind of leans into it. Whether you like him or not, like the way he deals with it is to just lean into the trolling. And that's why he's still there. He doesn't really get defensive in the same way that Jack has gotten defensive.
There's probably like mythological, archetypal, like the buttons that were pushed with that bomb, because you have masculinity.
Yeah.
What
Hybrid says the king of getting swatted. Yeah, all of those people are. That's why I don't get into that stuff on the internet. I don't ever talk about it. There's plenty of things to talk about. It would probably raise my profile a little bit. Just like by happenstance, Jack Murphy, I got a bunch of subs from that Jack Murphy meme. But that is just a part of the internet that I'll just keep as entertainment for when I'm not doing Zoobox stuff.
What is a man? No, that's a hotly contested thing. A lot of people are fighting over that, and even men are fighting with men over that, right? So there's a salience there. There's a through line there. Then there's the the actual, is her name Sydney? The actual event, it's shocking. There's that shock value, but that's just the Will Smith slap. That's just like what gets everybody's attention. But then there's just the
yes, that is the thing that got everybody's attention. But it was his reaction to the attention that makes the difference. If he had just kind of faded away, if this guy had just made a straightforward, basic bitch apology, I just said I was wrong. I'm sorry. It's something I don't like to talk about. If he had just caught to the idea that he actually had through this process, through the thing that he sells to other people, if he had just said, I've become a better person. I've become a better man. I've lived through this. I've been a degenerate. I've been down there. And I've come out the other side better for it. But he couldn't do that. He couldn't do that. And he still, to this day, makes kind of excuses or makes light of it in a certain way, which is fine. If he was not like a moral arbiter, if he was not like some sort of masculinity coach, then it wouldn't matter. But it was an opportunity for him, honestly, to just be like, yeah, just to come clean in a weird way, get out in front of it and say, like, yeah, look where I was a couple years ago. And look how much success I have by leaving it behind and becoming a better person. But he didn't do that. He made excuses that it's just kinky sex. It was kinky sex. It's like, yeah, from his perspective, that's all it was. And it shows a lack of, I guess, quote unquote, remorse. Not that you have to be sorry for the things that you do personally, honestly, but if you present to yourself as like an honest arbiter of truth, people are going to look at that. They just are. It's because if your brand is masculinity, if your brand is forward thinking, moralistic progress as a person, people are going to pay very close attention to the things that you've done.
This ripple effect across this particular part of the internet, and I think it has to do with the Venn diagram overlapping of like IDW-ish or post IDW stuff, and the Gamergate, like kind of the subgenre of shit posting, trolling, Gamergate, kind of Kotaku and Action and Tumblr and Action people who make a lot of commoner content. It was just those two worlds colliding.
Making commoner content. I don't know. Do you think like Mr. Medicare is commoner content? Or do you have to be kind of plugged in a little bit to understand or know that kind of thing? I don't know if I would consider that commoner content. It's for a very specific audience that is just bigger than most people think.
And then you just became the focal point of that.
Yeah. I never wanted that audience. I never wanted to be engaged with that audience. I want to talk about nerdy stuff on a nerdy level.
Except when he did. And these things, like I said, the dissonance here is that these things are not that far removed from where he is now. We're talking like 2019, 2020. Like when he's first trying to like sell his book of like, Republican or Democrat to Republican. Or is it Democrat to Deplorable? Is that his book? So he's going from that. That's how he's presenting himself when he first like is engaged with Tim Pool on his show. Trying to say like, well, I've seen the light. I'm changing my life. I've really come around. And if you look at the timeline, well, at that point in his life, he's doing Chatterbait with his girlfriend, now wife, I think. The Red Hen.
In depth and at length. And, maybe I should have bailed off the Tim Pool show once it was getting so big, but I didn't know. And again, Lydia, just my friend. Ian, just my friend. Tim, just my friend.
They're good people.
They are. They're great.
Yeah, but why would you bail off of it? There's no reason to bail off of it. You're trying to increase your profile. Like, even Jack knows that he's not doing these highfalutin intellectual conversations, these podcasts for nobody. He doesn't want nobody to watch them. He doesn't even want a small. He thinks it would be if you were being honest, he would be like, well, I wish 2 million people watch them. So this is kind of like silly. It's just kind of silly to like suggest that maybe I shouldn't have done it. Like, why not? It's just it's a lack of personal accountability. Like if he had just kind of owned up to it and just kind of went with it, just kind of rolled with it, he probably would have blew over pretty quickly.
Great people. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them, and they've been kind and awesome to me through the whole thing. And since 2019 and before, I've known Tim for many years, going all the way back to 2016, during the first Trump campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's when we first met. And yeah, I don't know, dude.
Tim totally fucked this guy's wife, dude. Tim totally had his way with the Red Hen, and then she came back. all hot and bothered. He's all stimulated, and he just like he peed all over. He peed all over her right there in the front yard.
Well, so what now then? I mean, it's just coming back. I guess you start over. Like, what's your mindset on this? You just gonna focus on the work, head down, interview people.
So the first thing I did is just take care of myself, right?
Yeah.
Get right with spiritual elements in my life, as confusing and chaotic as they may be. I don't know. I'm on a journey. I'm on a process of exploration I've been on for a number of years, and I don't know where it is, but I've been praying quite a bit. This is back, just
Christ is king, y'all. Christ is king. Christ is king now. Okay? Cut him some slack.
I mean, I still pray, but like the initial, like, what do I do? Right. Take care of myself immediately, take care of my immediate family immediately. Make sure that my health and my sleep and my fitness are good. And, I'm not ashamed to admit, like, called up my old therapist. I'm like, it's time to fire up those weekly sessions again. And then reach out to the extended family and to my friends and actual real friends, and shore those up. And then it was just grief, man. There's a lot of grief. We spent a lot of time working. We put in a lot of energy traveling, 19 states, I think, something like that, more than 20 states maybe in 2021. All these events, all this work, all these connections that I made, all these relationships that I poured a lot of energy into. And in one moment, a lot of those bridges just went up in smoke, man. Oof. And so there's definitely grieving, mourning. I mean, it's grief, but you process through it. Therapist says I did it very quickly. It's only been 3.5 months or something, right? It was the end of December.
Yeah, I don't know if the therapist's like perspective is a good one. Well, you really got over this really quickly. Does this look like a man that has gotten over it? That he's really truly processed it? Can you really truly process this kind of life-altering, life-changing thing in 3 months, 4 months? It's like having a family member die.
Yeah.
So, process through it and then get back to work. So
there's I've been mini canceled. I cultivate mini cancellations just to get used to it, and check myself and keep humble and grounded. But there is in the internet, it's built out of emotions, and it's built out of very shallow emotions, very strong but very shallow, very bright, very brief emotions. And one of those emotions that is just a human constant is humiliating somebody else. Like, people gather around, like, this is a time.
That's 100% true. I mean, you could even, like, in a microcosm of this, like, think of like the Three Stooges. Think about stuff like that. Like, why do you like watching that stuff? Why do you think it's funny? It's because you like seeing people humiliated and hurt, and people that you perceive to be dumb or arrogant or whatever get what's coming to them. That's a very, very deep-seated, fundamental part of being a human being, for better or worse.
The pillory. This is the time to humiliate. And being humiliated, there's two sides of that, right?
Sometimes being humiliated makes you come, like in the case of Mr. John Goldman.
There's the people who are doing the humiliation, and then there's the person who's humiliated. What are you humiliated by? Are you humiliated by their humiliation, or are you humiliated by your own actions? And if you are humiliated by your own actions, then you're humiliated.
Are you sorry for what you've done, or are you sorry that you got caught?
That's between you and yourself, or you and your God, or whatever. It has nothing to do with the audience anymore. I mean, it does when you want to engage back into them, but that humiliation is it's not really a social. It is to a certain extent to humiliation, because we're social creatures, and you go back to the savannah. We had to humiliate each other to make sure that certain behaviors did not occur to continue our survival. So that was just a part of how human beings kind of dealt with their social environment and the realities of their other environment. We're in a different time now, but that programming's still there. But really, the humiliations between the people that you directly affected, you and the people you directly affected, and then you and yourself and who you are, and then checking back in. And the process of being humiliated, the process of becoming humble, and the process of working through that is between you and yourself, you and your close people. And it's not between you and the audience, people who don't know you, people who don't care about you. Mm-hmm. But because it's amplified so much, it's really difficult for our minds to make that distinction between like the world hates me and like, no, it's not the world. It's just this fake virtual world, you know?
Right, man. There's a lot.
Yeah, but when your whole life is that fake virtual world, when you subsist in the virtual world, like you don't have things outside of it. Like he built like a little mini career in a community that is completely virtual, other than like going to these meetups. But for the most part, it exists in a completely virtual space. I'm sure he has family and friends, etc. And you got to weigh whether those things matter more than the life that you're building in this other instance. But that's how he makes a living. Like he makes a living living in the virtual world, being an avatar.
To address there, one, do I regret some of my actions in the past? Yes. Am I ashamed of any of them? No. So like I was never feeling any personal humiliation about what I had done or anything. Nothing. Do I regret it? Sure. Would I advise people to do some of the things that I did? Probably not. I'd advise against it. But like, am I ashamed? No. And do I have any negative, like lingering feelings from it? No, absolutely not.
Now, do we read this as confidence, or do we read this as a lie? Do we say like, do we think that Jack Murphy actually holds different values now than he did 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Do we think he actually feels differently? Do you think he's still engaging in the kind of behavior that people didn't like? Curious.
The humiliation, in fact, in some ways, there was a straw man created about me, right? Like it's interesting. You bring up the persona, and there's at once me, and then there's maybe a persona.
Yeah, if your name is John Goldman and you present yourself online as Jack Murphy, then you are presenting a persona. He knows that. He understands that.
That I cultivated, but I felt like it was really congruent and authentic with who I was, and I think that was part of my charm to people. I was always very open and honest about my struggles with my divorce and with getting more time with my kids and what it's like to be a dad and just growth and change and evolution and going from Democrat to the portable and all these things. Like I was just very authentic and open, cards on the table, right? Because I started writing as a Sood and then kept writing as if I were a Sood. And I think that was part of the appeal. I have felt like that there's been a straw man created of me that then was burned in effigy a million billion times over. And so I get frustrated sometimes because of the way that there's just an artifact of me out there that's not me, that I didn't create, that doesn't resonate with who I am as a person, but yet everyone is engaging with it, even my friends and people in my network and people who I associated with and whatnot. And it's just been burned. It's just a creation of me that's not me, that's been burned and people pointing and laughing at. And then I try to do my normal work, and then it just flows in. People continuing, and now to me, it's just noise, right? It's just spam. It's like, I delete, I block. But what's troubling, and this is the hardest part of it all for me, has been the stress or damage that has been brought to people who had associated with me.
See, this is where I feel like some sympathy for Jack Murphy. He said the people that have been associated with him, but I would think of like my sons. I would think of my kids. That's who I would be thinking of. I wouldn't be really thinking of my associates. Like if I had blown up to this degree for some sort of behavior that was potentially or maybe embarrassing, I would feel bad that my family had to deal with that. My first thing, I wouldn't say like, well, my associates. I'm sorry that Tim Pool's chat was really fucked up for about a week. I probably wouldn't really care about that.
By virtue of their association with me, right? And I think it hurt a lot of relationships that I had in that regard. It may have brought damage to some people. I don't know any specific instances, but it may have. And I felt guilt about that, right? Like there were a number of people in my network that I reached out to, and I was like, look, I'm sorry that all this is happening. Because I really was like, I am sorry that happened. I regret about that.
Regrets.
It's out of my control. Like if somebody wants to make up a facsimile of me and then spend weeks, months, even still to this day, trying to tear it down and get views and clout and gain off of it, I can't stop them. But it makes it difficult for me sometimes to continue on with my current work. But I'll say this. We just opened up recruitment into the LO for the first time since the incident. People have called it the Jack attack or the porn incident. There were a number of different things.
There's a lot of memes. It was very memeable, man. I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's just people I'm close to using those terms. And what's happened is it's created a very powerful and valuable filter. And for me, I'm turning this into the best thing that's ever happened to me, right?
Yeah, because now he can just like immediately recognize dissent and filter it out and get rid of it. Because anybody that makes an inference or a joke at his expense because of his experience, he can write off.
It's filtered out all of my relationships with people who were transactional, who just wanted to ride on my clout or who just wanted to get views.
Why? Who the fuck needs to ride on the clout of a guy that gets like 1,200 views a video? I mean, granted, those would be very solid Zubox numbers, but like if you're trying to find clout, he gets like 800 to 1,200 views a video, and that was before all this stuff. That Timcast magic, not very magical.
Or wanted to feel like they were getting close to Tim, or whatever the case may be. Or who thought in their minds that they had built up this vision and this idea of who I was that was then destroyed. Okay, well, that wasn't me. It's not me.
Yeah, you built that up. Like, I don't understand this, even at this point. I mean, it's only been a few months and maybe this is too early for him to be doing something like this, but like, just take some personal responsibility, take some personal accountability, be self-aware. It's just like, why be defensive about it even after everything that's happened and the reasons why everything happened, the reasons why it kind of blew up. Some of it was his own behavior. Some of it was like what Jeremy from the quartering. I mean, like the guy plays coy, but like the guy totally blew this the fuck up. Like he blew this whole situation up and he'll be like, oh, little old me. Yeah, he did. And he did it maliciously too. He did.
If that bothers you, okay, have fun over there. And, the guys in the LO, they know that we're there for the values and we're there for the brotherhood and for action and being courageous and honest and loyal and working towards sovereignty. And they know that was like a separate phenomenon that just exploded in the universe. And if they can't see past the fact that there was some nefarious action, and I don't mean like a conspiracy or anything, but just like people taking glee in the destruction of another human being, right? Like dancing around and like making videos and cheering and being, yeah, look at, he's ruined. Look at him burn. It's amazing.
Jack Murphy is engaged in this kind of stuff when it came to abstract punditry. People that like were in the political sphere or pundits that got things wrong, that no longer have careers. I mean, he would join in on that kind of destruction. People just gravitate towards calling out hypocrisy. And that's what they identified him as, a hypocrite.
They were all so excited about it. It was like, it was crazed. And shift gears a second. What you said about our evolution and about humiliation and whatnot. In reading Luke Burgess's book "Wanting" about Rene Girard, he laid out what happened to me in very clear terms: the mimetic contagion and scapegoating. Right. So, what happens when there are
the mimetic contagion? Accurate. The scapegoating, not really. Because nobody was trying to find a scapegoat for anything. They just identified, like I said, they identified a hypocrite. Nobody was scapegoating anything about any behavior or a community or whatever. Only things that were specifically attached to Jack Murphy. The liminal order got brought into it, of course, because that's his project.
Groups of people together with different ideas and challenges and differences and acrimony among them, if they can find a scapegoat, it allows them to purge the negative energy that they have within their group, within their relationships and the adjacencies and such that may not be congruent with who they are, what they want. And if they can all then pick one scapegoat and burn the witch or run the person out of town or hang him from the gallows or whatever it is a well-documented historical phenomenon that's happened all throughout time, where people will just pick somebody and whether they're guilty or not, just burn them at the stake. And the people that do the burning, they feel a release.
And bonding between each other for a period of time.
Well, that's true, right? Like, people feel good about like exercising what they consider a hypocrite or a demon or whatever you want to call it. Like, people do like feel a sense of self-righteousness about that. And I, even myself, I would totally agree. It reached a pitch that was completely disproportionate to what had actually happened. I mean, sure, like the guy was a kinky sex life. He was a cuck. He was part of the manosphere in kind of a negative way for a lot of his time doing that stuff. And I can understand, like, you can call it out, the hypocrisy, but like, it's something that even persists to this day. If you go check out his thread on QB Farms, there are people there, and not a small, insignificant amount of them, that are like, this guy can never have a life. We need to destroy him at every turn, every single time he does something. We need to be there. We need to be there to throw the pictures of him with a dildo up his ass. But at the same time, what am I doing? I feel like I'm trying to be fair. Honestly, I do, like, on the real, I don't wish this person any ill will. Like, I hope, like, he finds his way and does what he wants to do, achieves the things that he wants to achieve. But I also, at the same time, like, I do view him as a little bit of as a grifter. I do kind of view him as being a little disingenuous. And I think that, like, somebody like this kind of leads people astray, leads people into a type of lion's den. And really the thing that pissed me off the most was, like, learning about kind of the nature of the liminal order, about how many people that were there just trying to sell their own wares to guys that were there for community and support and learning how to be entrepreneurs and learning how to do things for themselves and their families. And then it was just like a wash with people trying to sell them things. Like, that's not, if you pay to be part of an exclusive club, you shouldn't have to be dealing with that shit. In fact, it should come with the price of admission. Like, if Jack wanted those guys in there, his friends, his history friends, his philosophy friends, if they wanted to offer classes or whatever, it shouldn't be part of the deal. And Jack should have been paying them. And there was a point with the liminal order where Jack was making like $70,000 a month, which is astounding. That's amazing. Good for you, dude. But if you're gonna do the things that you're gonna do, like, make it more inclusive. Like, do not be predatory. And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most. And that's why I kind of don't love or agree with like the project. And that's kind of why I have a little bit of a resentment, I suppose you could say, for a person like this. There's a lot of vulnerable people out there. There's a lot of weak people out there. There's a lot of people that don't know what the fuck they want out of life. And somebody like Jack Murphy will offer them a path only to be kind of fleeced and hoodwinked. And I don't agree. I don't support that.
Yeah. And they feel released, and then they come together for a period of time. It resolves intra-group conflict by picking a scapegoat and destroying them. And then, it goes away, and then they have time to build up their intra-group conflict all over again and not have a scapegoat or be desperately seeking scapegoat. I became a scapegoat. I'm not entirely sure why, and there's a lot of ways to debrief it, but I did, and I experienced it, and it was profoundly impactful on my life.
They went really deep. And doing research for this, people went really deep into your past, and
oh my God,
stuff that had nothing to do with.
Oh, what are you revealing, Benjamin Boyce? Where have you been?
The explosive materials, like they went all the way through.
They went 10, 15 years into my past trying to just trying to recreate every element of my life. Like I read some of the stuff, and they're like, this guy's a liar. He didn't do Muay Thai. I'm going to contact the regulatory body that he said he fought in to try to find out.
I mean, there were crazy people like that, but that's not the bulk of it. There may be one or two people that were like that, like activated in that way. Well, that was not representative of most of what people were digging up. People were digging up the salaciousness, the articles, the pornography, the chatterbait sessions.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I have medals, dude. Like I did it. Or, digging into my charter school work in the past, and they found, an article that this super woke activist wrote that painted everybody who is involved in charter schools in a bad light. They're like, oh, this is gospel. It was very fascinating to see the way that these people would take something that was obviously written by a hostile actor who in any other circumstance they would have said that person is woke, I hate that person, whatever, but take exactly what they said as being true, and they're trying to say that I scammed charter schools because I got paid $1.1 million over 7 years. I'm like, I don't know, man, just do the math.
Again, that was not the complaint that they had. There was evidence that he may have defrauded the charter school. He was occupying multiple roles, and I think hired himself as a consultant, even though he was part of a regulatory body, and then on top of that, hired himself as a consultant. That's what happened. There's actually a book apparently about all of the stuff that happened with the charter schools where Jack Murphy or John Goldman is featured, and they go more in depth about it. And there was a few news articles. It was all kind of nebulous. It all kind of dissipated. But the fact of the matter is, though, he did engage in things that people would consider shady. I think if you work for a regulatory body, if you're on the board of a charter school, and then you hire yourself as a consultant to get an extra paycheck, yeah, that's not right. That's not right. And from what I understand, my kid's in a charter school actually. This is something that happens a lot. A lot of people are ripping off charter schools. They found a way through it. They found a way to do that. And it happened. He's not the only one that engaged in this behavior. So he was probably clued into it. He was probably clued into like, hey, you can do this too. Because it's been something that's been going on for the better part of 20 years in charter schools. Because they are technically part of the public school system and they get state money, and the way that budgets work, there's just this infinite flow of shit. There's so much abuse and waste. And he was part of that.
That's a pretty reasonable professional salary for a CEO and executive director in a nonprofit world, right? I was underpaid, if anything. Mm-hmm. And they went back and into my family's lives, into every court record that's available, trying to part. I don't know why. And it wasn't just internet weirdos, right? These things percolated up into big high profile channels and big high profile folks It wasn't just some weird guy who's like, I don't know, digging in for
Yeah.
some reason because
Yeah.
obsessive.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably talking about the quartering, who just was like being a simpy white knight for Sydney, somebody that he's probably met maybe one time in his entire life, but they're friends. And he's also completely disingenuous. Completely, he knew that it was content, and content is king. And he leaned into it when he saw how people responded to it. And when he was on Twitter, he was sharing crazy stuff and deleting tweets, but he knew that the information would get out there because of his reach, his platform. Like, he is pretty much directly responsible for a lot of this. A lot of it being uncovered. Not for the actions themselves. He's got to take personal responsibility. He's got to own it. But to suggest that it was some sort of natural phenomenon, not really. Not really. He had a target on his back because he told Sydney Watson to go fuck herself, basically.
Yeah, it's so the news cycle with this stuff and the pickup content that we're doing, when a story breaks, a lot of people's attention turns to it, and I don't know to what degree we're ever going to have a gentleman's agreement or get wise to how this actually impacts human beings. Until you're in the hot seat, I don't think you know what it feels like. I really don't. I've been in the hot seat, like very contained little things where I use a pun on the word whore, and then I get a bunch of women really mad at me for 3 days, like I feel it, it's very contained, very radical little group, and then they purge all their, negative energy out of their group, and they have a peace for a time. I watch it. They have peace for a time, and then they start bitching at each other again until they find another person to go after. But when it happens on another scale, like the scale of your event was on a completely different tier, then I don't know, like you'd have to be a politician, and you're not a politician. You're just a podcast guy. So like the incongruence between the attention and your impact was like phenomenally out of whack.
Right. There's no sense of proportionality, no sense of justice.
Well, there's no sense of proportionality. I think that is actually very true. I mean, what did he do? I think if you start looking into the liminal order stuff and connect it in the way that I have connected it personally, then you could be like, yeah, fuck this guy. Fuck him. He's leading people into a situation where they're probably going to be ripped off to one degree or another. And I don't like, I find that very icky. But most people that have engaged in this behavior, have dogpiled, whatever you want to call it, have no fucking clue about that stuff. They're just these internet self-righteous, indignant assholes, the manosphere dudes, the guys that would be like, hey, try to go out and fuck 100 women and then try to find a virgin to marry. They all live in their own hypocrisies, their own bullshit.
And this is the mob, right? This is the mob.
The crowdsourced,
the crowdsourced open source swarm. I mean, there it is. It's in action right now. We can see it all over the place. And I mean, people will laugh when I said this, but like the same phenomenon that happened to me is what is happening right now with Putin and Russia, for right or wrong, better or worse. Is this?
Why do you have to do that, Jack? Like, why do you got to like bring yourself to that level? Why do you got to draw this comparison? This is the same thing that's happening with Putin and Russia. No, not even like, I mean, I know he's trying to make the microcosm argument, but like, no, not at all. Like, not even close. Come on, dude. This is what I mean about this guy. He has no sense of self-awareness. He's too broad. He's too like, takes everything too seriously, I suppose.
Same open source crowdsourced swarm trying to cancel, disconnect, break people's connections, dislodge them from the network, isolate them, shame them, and like strip away their power in a way that has no particular leader, and it has no sense of proportionality. It has no sense of mortality, right? Like all the people participating in the takedown of me or whatever you want to call it, none of them felt vulnerable. and there
There was
was a
no
sense
back
of
and forth. There was no
right. There's
equality
no,
between you two.
there's right, and there's so it's almost as if they're immortal. They can just act with impunity. And there's definitely no sense of justice because it's a group thing and no one is leading it with any sort of agency.
Definitive, outcome.
Right.
There's no outcome other than burn you.
Burn. And this is one thing that makes me laugh is, yeah, dude, they gave me like the Trump treatment. They gave me like world leader level treatment, like historical figure level treatment. Like, come on, dude.
They could have treated you like a very like Michael Jackson's statue whenever he made that big statue of himself.
Yeah. And it continues on, like.
Yeah, but why did it get there? That's what I mean about like just this lack of self-awareness, this lack of accountability. Like, why wouldn't you at some point you just be like, yeah, I fucked up. I should have handled this better. And I'm a better person now for it. I'm a better person having lived through the things I've lived through and the things I've done, which informs my work and informs why I'm able to give people advice and lead people into a better place, especially young men. But no. Like, what a wasted opportunity. What a wasted opportunity to rehabilitate yourself.
Memeing me with Will Smith. I'm like, okay, like Grammy winning, amazingly successful, global.
They're memeing you with Will Smith because you're a cuck and now you're on the internet as a cuck forever. You are a meme. Your beard is a meme. What he's referencing is there is a picture of Will Smith with Jada Pinkett Smith, and Will Smith has the Jack Murphy beard. That's what he's talking about.
Figure, and they're just like, Will Smith, Jack Murphy, same level. Let's talk some more shit. Like, I don't understand that.
Honestly, the most shocking thing is that it's not really shocking, but the fact that like now his name, his beard, his persona is so synonymous with cuckoldry that you could take his beard and put it on Will Smith's face and people immediately make the association and understand it. That's pretty wild. Like, so maybe he just doesn't understand like how pervasive, how widespread the sense of who he has become.
I wish I could have reaped the rewards of the status level that was afforded to me by the energy and effort people put in.
If this was all done on blockchain, you would have.
I mean, you could. You gotta go Ethan Ralph style. Okay, you gotta lean into it. Even if people are hate watching you, they're watching you.
Gotten all the credit every time your name was mentioned, right? Every time your product was repurposed, you would have been paid, in blockchain
handsomely.
Honestly, like if that was the reality, I would be totally fine with that. I would be totally fine with that. Even the meme thing that I made that kind of blew up, and it's on Kiwi Farms, and it's over 50,000 views. I would have been happy to give Jack Murphy whatever dime that could have been made from that.
Handsomely. And I think that it's a very good example of negative the dysfunction. Negative.
You know who's actually making money off of that? It's the guy who did the Titanic theme on the recorder. The bad recorder Titanic theme is the person that made all of the money off of that.
Clout. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking like there's a currency of clout, but you have negative clout, but you still have clout, but it's a negative clout because you're a meme now. Oh, not you, but Jack Murphy, right? You're like if Twitter made an emoji of you, like they do every once in a while in a movie, and then you got like you're salient. You're the same thing as that Ukraine flag that means nothing but can totally identify somebody as a part of a tribe. Has nothing to do with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People chasing clout, views, money. People made a bunch of money off of it. Lots
I wish I had. Jesus Christ, Jack. I'll tell you what. I got bills to pay. I wish I could have made at least like $10 off of you.
of money, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars made off of trying to hurt me. And I guess my message to people who, and I doubt that the
Well, because people think about it in the sense that you are hurting other people. That's the way people have viewed it. Not everybody. Not everybody for sure. I mean, there's some, just like in any community, there's some wildins out there. There's some crazy folk. But I don't think most of it was motivated by money. People like Jeremy from the Quartering, definitely motivated by money and attention.
universes really overlap here, but if you're following somebody who makes money off of hurting people that really haven't done anything wrong, then you should probably reconsider why you're engaging with those people, right? Like, why your eyeballs, your attention is paying them to do bad things. Like, you're a part of that ecosystem. Don't be a part of that ecosystem unless you like to, unless you want to.
Yeah. Well, at least I guess be honest about it.
Right?
Yeah.
The revealed status interpretation is something that makes me chuckle.
What
too.
was this?
Revealed status interpretation. Like, you don't hopefully punch down, right? You're not looking around for people that have less clout, less power, less influence, less standing. You're not going around just trying to find people to hurt. You think these people who put in the time to try to take me down, they must have been thinking that I was in some elevated status from them, right? Because how else are you going to gain clout if not by attacking somebody with elevated status?
The playing field isn't like that. It's not like you're above them. It's just you're salient. Well, Jack, I keep on thinking of there's the person I'm talking to, and then there's the person that we're talking about, which is kind of two different people, because we're talking about what other people are talking about, which is not you, right? So there's this weird collapse that I have to do in my brain, but we're just going to say you or
it's actually a third one. It's actually a third one, right?
There's
there's me as a human, there's me as who I put out as a content creator, and then there's me as who they created.
Yeah. And they're all collapsed because they all they affect you, and then they.
But who is telling the truth, Jack? Who is telling the truth? Who's out there telling the truth?
It's just this big thing.
And to say that they've collapsed without getting into personal details is collapse in the most intimate and personal ways, right?
Like 9/11 style.
Like the closest
Steel
personal
beams.
relationships, family relationships.
9/11 style. Oh my God, is this a Frank James fan?
Whoa, what the fuck?
Goodness gracious.
Things like this have all been tainted by that. And it's been, like a total collapse, what is the yeah, exactly. It just sucked it all into one thing. And now look, this already has been a positive for me in many ways. I am completely cleansed at this point, right? Like, all of my worst, darkest secrets in the universe are out there. Anything I've ever done in the universe is out there. But don't stop laughing. Everyone knows anything that they want to know.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I feel like that's got to be, in some respect, kind of liberating. And he should embrace that liberation. But he also should not make excuses or be defensive. Not because he doesn't have a right to be defensive or to make excuses, but because of how clearly he knows people will react. That's like, he shouldn't apologize. He shouldn't do anything he doesn't want to do or doesn't mean. But don't play into it. Don't play into this game. Don't play into this game, John.
So that filter is up. And so anybody that comes into my life now, anybody that enters into my sphere, anyone that they're pre-vetted by this phenomenon that happened. Yeah. And you know what? That's good. No ticking time bombs, nothing to conceal, nothing to avoid, nothing. I've been reborn in a way.
So there's when we go and we judge somebody, there's different things that people find salient to judge. One thing that when I read through your articles that it perturbed me was your expression of a view of women that I just didn't like. It seemed like there were certain articles that you wrote, maybe about feminists or something, about really degrading women. Like I just have a really negative reaction to that. So I'm just wondering, and I don't judge you, but I just have a negative reaction. That was the most negative thing that I saw. So
the feminist need rape article.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Where
I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
He's happy to talk about it now. He wasn't happy to talk about it before. Yeah, like he's gonna, because it's tongue in cheek. It's tongue in cheek. That's what makes all this stuff so dumb. Is that he couldn't just own up to it was tongue in cheek. It was stupid. Whatever. If he had been on that podcast that you were here podcast, it's it's just a fucking stupid thing I wrote. That was before I kind of came to terms with a lot of things, and just it's from the past. Nobody would have gave a shit.
That was one. It was poorly written, right? If you got to go back, it was all the way back in 2015.
And this is a previous. This is Manosphere. You're basically a synonymous. You're shit posting. Yeah. I understand.
Totally shit posting.
Okay, I understand the style. Okay.
Totally shit posting, and it was in response at the time to Milo Yiannopoulos was giving feminist shit, and feminists were kink shaming women for making their own choices and whatnot of how they want to engage sexually with people. And I was writing.
I don't know if that's true. Feminists were criticizing other feminists for the way they wanted to engage with people sexually. So you wrote the Feminists Need Rape article? Okay.
At the time about dominance and submission, BDSM type stuff, in of itself a construct, right? BDSM and dominant submissive, sex play, role play like that is in of itself a construct. It's a scenario that you willingly step into. And then when it's done, you step away from it. And it's not who you are. It's not your whole life. It's a fantasy.
So just like the internet then, basically.
Yeah. So it's a construct within a construct within a construct. And the poorly executed takeaway of that was that if feminists would only just acknowledge that perhaps that there is not a complete power symmetry in every relationship, but that sometimes women and men want the man to take the lead and the woman to follow. And it can be done in a very healthy and constructive way, which resonates, I think, with traditional ideas of marriage and a lot of high function.
Yeah, it resonates with traditional ideas of marriage, like having your girlfriend pick up dudes at bars or fuck guys from Tinder, and then you come home, they come home to you and you pee on them while they're blowing you. Very traditional, very trad con stuff.
Relationships are in that regard, first the captain and the first mate. And so that's really, it was just meant to be a troll piece, to be if only feminists would just relax.
Honestly, he's full of shit. I think this is a retcon rationalization of what he wrote. If you go read it, and also it's an alpha cuck. If you go to Zoobox, if you go to our main channel, you can watch the Nightcap episode called Alpha Cuck. I read the article. I read it. It's not what he is presenting it as at all. Because, and the reason you know that is because you understand, if we know his lifestyle at the time, the things that he was into, then you know that it was not as he's presenting it right now.
And get involved in some sort of sexual relationship where they could submit, that they would find some power in that submission and maybe even some joy in that. It wasn't meant to be misogynist or hate women or anything like that. No, man, I've got daughters. I've got a woman that I've been with now for 8 years. We're getting married this year. I love my mom, I have no hate for women in me at all. I love them. And in fact, there was an exhortation to women, maybe perhaps finding happiness in a relationship in which the man follows, or the man leads and the woman follows, which is antithetical to the feminist proposition, which suggests that women should be the idealized version of men and that they don't need men, et cetera, et cetera. So, it was poorly executed. and it was meant to be provocative, and it was only meant to be seen by just a few hundred people. And then I deleted it, and then I took it down as part of that platform responsibility I was talking about. It was an appropriate thing to be transmitted out into the universe on a broad scale.
Yeah.
It was only meant to be for a very small niche who got the joke already.
Yeah.
Right. It was like,
except that there were comments that were archived from the comments section where he defends it. He defended that article, and he also defended the Cuck article vociferously. Like these were not passive things that he was engaged with. And he gets a little squirrely about like his engagement or his place in the manosphere. Oh no, I don't like the bad stuff. I don't like the bad sides of the manosphere. I don't like the misogyny. I don't like all the rape apologetics. I don't like all that kind of stuff. But there was a time where he was definitely at least more lenient towards it, more understanding of it.
It was like an inside joke for people that got broadcasted to the universe. So I deleted it, man. I deleted all that stuff years ago, and it only resurfaced.
He deleted it because of the blowback. He did not delete those because of attention. If 1 million people saw it and they agreed with it, he would have never have deleted it. He saw, though, that the community that he was involved with, at least online, right, through message boards and etc., like he had described, they did not react positively to it. So he deleted it. It has nothing to do with some sort of like a responsibility or like, oh, the platform, and I shouldn't be saying those things. I shouldn't be putting those ideas out there. That's not why. That's not why. And we know that. So when he says when he tries to frame it this way, it's not really being honest.
Because people had kept it, people had archived it, people had kept screenshots of it, and every time my profile got a little bit bigger, they would like just reintroduce it into the flow as a way to try to chip away at me. People dug through my internet trash to find inside jokes with my boys that they didn't get in order to paint me in a poor light. And that goes back to the lack of justice or proportionality or whatever that we were talking about.
There's a lot of I'm just trying to sort through all the information that I have in my head now. You've said before when you came on my channel, the manosphere is something, it's a very temporary thing, something to pass through. I'm wondering why, and I'm wondering if there's something about the values that were inherent or are inherent in what was or is the manosphere that have stuck to you, that you think, well, that's not part of me, that was something I was wrestling with or engaging with, but that's not part of me. And if that is part of the bomb that was created, if there's something in the manosphere or masculinity or dominance and submission, these ideas that...
Well, I think I would separate masculinity out from, and remind me to come back to your question, because I'm not going to answer it right this second. Okay. Masculinity, we're pulling this out for a second, because masculinity is not a bad thing. In fact, masculinity is something that's been studied and promoted throughout all time. It's Lindy as it gets, right? And our working definition in liminal order of masculinity, we've studied this through Socrates and Aristotle and through Hobbes and Locke and into Nietzsche and beyond to come up with a path or an understanding of what it means to be a man. And it begs the...
And it really just kind of comes down to having a sense of personal responsibility and taking care of the things that you create, and engendering towards things that you want to create, that you want to happen. That's it. That's the end. He threw a bunch of names out there, but that's all he's talking about. So that's why people reacted kind of negatively to his behavior, because they felt like, well, that's not being a man. That's not being masculine. It's not being a Chad.
Question, or raises the question, why do we even need to study what it means to be a man? And part of that is because those ideas have been hidden to our boys today, and they were hidden to me as someone who was raised.
He's not wrong there, right? the feminization of education and how men are treated in society today. Not very good. You're constantly told to work against your nature, your proclivities, whatever you want to call them. Those things are taboo now. Being a strong, forward-thinking, stable, masculine, adult man is not something that a certain segment of society, at least popular culture, they promote that as a negative thing. Kind of knowing what you want, going after it, not taking no for an answer, etc.
He's in a non-religious, totally liberal, just follow your dreams, do whatever you want, the libertarian-esque environment where no one ever talked to me about Aristotelian excellences. No one ever talked to me about honor and courage and virtue and what it means to.
And those are bad things. And this is a this is a generational failure. This is a generational failure. My father experienced it. And because my father experienced it, I experienced it. And now that I have enough self-awareness, I take forward something in my own life and with my incoming sons, that I wanted to instill in them. I have enough self-awareness to know what happened to my father and my father's father and myself. It's about iteration. And he's not wrong here, because there were two generations of men that were kind of lost. Their parents were encouraged to be selfish or to be progressive, and there was something lost in the mix of that, something lost in the maelstrom.
Build and to create, that was something that had to be discovered. And the manosphere played a very vital role in this one area.
In connecting you to that.
In connecting me to the notion that I had obscured from me what it meant to act in a masculine way or to be a confident, powerful male. Because think about when I'm raised, I'm born in 76, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and then into this feminist blow up. And we all know that it's been obscured, right? Like, we all know that the feminization of society is something that's been ongoing for some time, and it's manifested itself now in our socially contagious trans epidemic and all these things, where it really comes down to the essence of trying to destroy identity as a meaning, or using identity rather as a plane of meaning. And
he's totally accurate. This is all accurate. He's right about this.
I will credit, which is different from using, say, like Hobbesian Lockean plane of meaning, which is survival, or which is different than using an Aristotelian plane of meaning, which is the good life and acting with honor for the polis, right? And so I didn't know any of those things. So I will credit the manosphere to triggering me into trying to understand what's going on in society and culture and why. And that thread that I pulled on in the manosphere led me to studying Aristotle and to studying the different planes of meaning that have been used throughout time, and how we're on now to using identity, which is a postmodern concept. In fact, it's Nietzschean. We can talk about that later, but it's that this is the plane of meaning we're operating on, and why that's bad for society, and what do you do as a response to it. So I would credit the manosphere for triggering me to even consider these notions and then to seek the answers. The problem with the manosphere is when you just get stuck in the pickup part of it, when you just get,
which is the largest part of it. It is the fixation of the manosphere, is the pickup artist mentality. He's not wrong about this diagnosis. And, and in this instance, in this moment, he's become self-aware a little bit, and he's just kind of talking about living life and growing up and learning things and maturing. And that's tough. That's something everybody goes through to one degree or another. Maybe not to the extreme that he's gone through it, but in fairness, it is something everybody grapples with. Every modern man grapples with this stuff, about their place, about what those things mean. especially if they're untethered from like having a life of their own. If you don't have a family and you don't have like people that depend on you and need your support, you don't have obligations, then what are you doing? Then what do you have? You just have yourself. And in some respect, that becomes very destructive.
Stuck in the like, how do I talk to girls? How do I have sex with many girls as I possibly can, et cetera, et cetera. And that part is, I think, misogynistic. And I think that part of it is bad. Now, should guys be equipped in like how to actually talk to people? Yes, basic social skills are important. But should we be teaching guys like how to bed as many women as they possibly can? No, absolutely not. And the contradiction within the manosphere is a toxic one, where they'll at once say, go out there, bang as many girls as you can, but then when it's time to get married, only marry a girl who's a virgin or has had one partner.
It's a very like pedantic, childish way of viewing relationships. There's an old episode of Nightcap. If you go back to our main channel on Zoobox, it's called For Love and Profit. And I watched hours and hours and hours of Fresh and Fit, I think their name is. And about how, and because they're very much part of this pickup culture manosphere that he's talking about, and about how like poisonous it is and how like short-sighted and pedantic it is. It's not a healthy, it's just not a healthy thing.
And what that does is, by virtue of the structure there, is create what I call the army of useless sluts. So their whole perspective requires an army of useless sluts in society that are just there to be used as a stepping stone to your manhood until that you decide to marry a virgin. Okay, all that is crap. And I don't want to be associated with it. And anybody that's promoting that stuff, I don't want any association with that at all.
Which is like 90% of the manosphere. Rollo Tomasi, Fresh and Fit. This is the kind of stuff they talk about because they only perceive life and women as club girls. They don't ever tell people or young men to go to other places, maybe to meet people, work, the gym, I don't know, church, whatever. No, they live in this hyper-sexualized, modernistic lens of everything. And that's how they preach. And it's really gross. It's really fucking gross. I got to revisit that shit. I got to revisit that stuff in the future. I have a dossier being built in the background of my life where I just throw links in there occasionally with the manosphere stuff. And it's really pathetic. It's really pathetic sometimes.
And I left it many, many, many years ago. Many years ago. And I had deleted anything that was even related to that. And I took it all.
When he says many, many years ago, he means like 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago. He didn't leave it behind. He didn't. That's not how he perceived relationships, even in 2020. All his dirty laundry has been aired. And I don't understand like his impulse to just cop to it and then say this. And then say this. It's just going to do him so... People would accept it. They would accept that. People like something genuine and honest. And if you want to be a forward-facing personality or a person that's trying to help people find truth and trying to find something in their life, then just fucking do that. Then just fucking do that. You don't need all these caveats and all this bullshit. You don't need it. Just acknowledge it. Talk about how it affected you, how it brought you to where you are, and move forward. That would be the most productive thing you could do, and in a way, the most helpful thing you could do.
All down. And in fact, even back then, I would write about the value of being at the head of your dining room table. I would write about the value. One of my earliest pieces was called Red Pill in Love. And it was controversial and didn't have much resonance there because how can you be red pill in love? And I talked about Jonathan Haidt's happiness hypothesis, about the difference between passionate love, companionate love, and how the area under the curve for companionate love is much higher and greater. And I was always encouraging people into long-term relationships. I myself have been in one and I love it. We're getting married and I can't wait for the rest of our life together. And so to the extent that the manosphere is a way station, for people that may not have a dad or a strong role model to just give them confidence, or as a place to learn about some of our societal ills, it had value. But that last part, to learn about our societal ills, is no longer necessary, because the critique of feminism and its impact on society is now a mainstream concept, right? James Lindsay has done a tremendous job at pushing.
You know, in all honesty, people need people like Jack Murphy to exist. Maybe without the baggage. But if he was just upfront about his baggage, that could be of a great use to many, many, many young men, or just maybe men in general. He should embrace us in a way that he's not. He just wants to push forward. It's in the rear view mirror. What people say doesn't matter. You just got to lean into it and just fucking embrace it. Just fucking embrace it. Tell us what you learned. Tell us why it made you who you are. Like, if you want to have an actual effect, if you want to be a positive force, you got to come to terms with that, Jack. John Goldman, you got to learn. You got to accept
that out there, and other people. I mean, I had a part to do with it myself, but James is taking it to a whole nother level. That's just out there. It's just general. You if you're 16 years old and you're on the internet, you get memes about it. Like, you understand. You understand about how everything's racist and everything's sexist and all these things. Mm-hmm. But we didn't know that. The Manosphere was a great sense-making place back 15 years ago. But anybody that's still stuck in there now is sick, twisted. You know, you're warped. And to the extent that they're now also funneling in new young guys, I think it is bad, because the most highest value of it all was the sense-making element, to figure out that the feminist thing, and then the plane of identity as meaning for the world, the postmodern concept is, sussing that out was an important value.
I can respect that. I can respect that there was a time and a place for like the intensity of the manosphere and pushing back. You know, sometimes you need a blunt instrument, sometimes you need a hammer. I think we're finding that out right now when it comes to, like, trans children. Sometimes you just need a hammer. Sometimes you need somebody like Matt Walsh or James Lindsay just come in there and just start wrecking shit, just so people pay attention, just so people can see it for what it is, to like see the pieces laid before them. And there was probably a time, 2008 to 2014, whatever he's talking about, where there was utility in going that hard in the other direction. And then the world kind of corrects itself because they force the conversation. They force these things into the zeitgeist. And a reasonable, rational person, they kind of see it for what it is. They see it for what it is, and they move forward. And they're able to kind of take that into consideration. You could be a part of that, John Goldman. You could be the new wave if you want it to be. Don't be an alpha cuck. I know you're apex level, John. But fucking get with it, dude.
There was of value to society. But if it were me, I'd say cap that up, put it away. It's done. I moved on. The world should be moving on as well. And those man boys in there should be moving on as well. And, I've been dragging that baggage around with me for a long time. It sucks. But at the same time, I would not have had come to being a early discusser, sense maker about these concepts without having gone through that. And then not only discussing it, but then putting it into practice. Like, what are we going to do to combat this? Well, let's get together a bunch of guys who find value in, traditional masculinity. And to anticipate a critique or to address a critique that has been placed on me, people said, Giga Chad snake oil salesman teaching disaffected youths how to be a man. I mean, nothing could be farther from the truth when it comes to that. Inside the LO, there's no me teaching people how to be a man. What we're doing is putting out a signal of, like, do you believe in the value of masculinity and the power of building and creating and doing with honor and courage and loyalty? Oh, you believe in that? Great. Let's get together in a brotherhood, which is another name for community, and just operate in a sane, healthy way. Almost every single one of our guys in the LO is married with kids.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about fatherhood. We talk about how to raise our daughters, how to raise our sons, how to build a better world for them, and how to focus on our family and be good leaders for our family.
And if that was what it was, if that's what all it was, that's very respectable. That's very stand up. It's very respectable to do that. But unfortunately, we have a little bit of insider knowledge. We know that's not entirely what was going on there. This was a business for him. You're charging people $1,200 to go to a brunch, or you're allowing your buddies who have their own businesses and their own guru types things to exist in there and offer people classes where it costs hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. That's not the community that was in there. And that's not what was happening. I wish it was. I wish it was. That would be a net positive. That's a good thing. Dare I say, that's a good thing.
It goes back to the sense that people built a straw man up of me just by association with the term masculinity. And
I don't understand why he does not embrace this opportunity to purge himself of all of that bullshit and then reconvene. Just reconvene. Be like, yeah, a lot of fucked up shit. I agree with the things that I agree with some of the criticism, disagree with others. And I'm going to turn a new leaf. I'm going to do something new. It makes it feel disingenuous when somebody's so defensive, because it makes you feel like they're actually not understanding what some people had a problem with. Fair or unfair. But that's that's how it makes you feel. Just cop to it. Because if you don't cop to it, then it means you're not really sorry, and it means that you really aren't that much different. You haven't changed all that much.
they've been trying to tear that down. And I don't remember what your original question was.
Well, you answered whatever I was going for, anyways. There's just a through line because some of the material that surfaced was about you humiliating women, or in one way or another, directly or rhetorically. And it was just, I think that fueled the humiliation. It's like, oh, this guy likes humiliation. Let's turn the tables around on him. And so when
which was something that was speculated, that he likes humiliation so much that he is bringing upon himself more humiliation so that he could come.
when we talk about BDSM,
He's like, oh yeah, oh that's interesting. Come on, dude. Come on. It's so tiresome. Just own it.
them or sub-dom stuff, which I don't understand. It's never been salient to me. I just wonder if that translates, or if that how that operates within a context of consensuality or whatever, and then how it explodes when it's projected onto the.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff, man. I wrote one of the very first pieces I ever wrote was called A Framework for Sexual Health. And I was promoting within the manosphere, and nobody seemed to like this, a model for sexual health that had added at the top of it consent, honesty. These are the components: honesty, consent, protection from disease and pregnancy, mutual benefit, shared.
Yeah, because this is the BDSM line. There's a whole, which is, I'm sure, which is true amongst the community, but it's not like some to frame this as well, I was trying to do some really good, noble, virtuous thing. I mean, maybe in the context of what normally goes on in BDSM relationships, but it seems like that's a pretty standard log line as far as I've ever been aware of it, which would have been from the time I was a teenager till now. If you're a long watcher of NIGHTCAP, we've gone down these roads. We've heard a lot of these arguments, and sounds like he's going to just reiterate those arguments, which would indicate to me that he still has a proclivity for them, which is fine. Which is fine. If that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. Just cop to it. Just say, yeah, I'm into kinky sex.
Values. The last one's escaping me. But these are the ideas: honesty, consent, shared values,
Communication, maybe. Yeah.
communication, and mutual benefit, mutual enjoyment, etc. And nobody brings that up when they're trying to give me a hard time. That I've been preaching about this for years, or did it years ago. And again, the people's recoiling at the sense of like, is it bad for a man to humiliate a woman upon request? Is the last part. And it's a failure to just acknowledge female agency.
See, when he says upon request, he's talking about what he did to his fiance before girlfriend, which was a humiliation ritual, making her go on Tinder dates, making her try to pick up dudes from bars, urinating on her. He's suggesting that, like, that's her idea. She requested those things. But through the dossiers, through the time, through the information that's available, that's actually not the truth of it. He had to goad his now fiance into this behavior, into doing these things. She wasn't even comfortable with it. She did it to placate her man, somebody she cared about a great deal. He convinced her, he brought her into the lifestyle. So when he says, like, well, it's a service, she asked for this, they want this, that's not entirely true. It's something that he, like, I don't know, for lack of a better way to put it, like, he groomed a person into accepting. And doesn't seem like he's going to be very forthcoming with that. Which I understand. Maybe that's embarrassing. Maybe he feels differently. But if you're at this, if you're in this place, you're already here. Just say it. Just cop to it.
Agency, which goes back to the whole feminist need rape article, which was really a statement about female agency. It was an article in support of female agency. There are women out there who actually enjoy engaging in that type of behavior in a controlled environment, with consent, with honesty, with predetermined boundaries, and as a thing that's a construct but not your life.
Yeah, some women do. Not your woman.
And I know it's difficult intellectually, perhaps, for people to wrap their mind around that.
That doesn't
see, but like, this is what he said. Like, these are all rationalizations. This does not seem like a person that has moved on from this mentality. He's like, no, this is something that people do and people, like, want and desire, and you don't understand it. He's like, well, I understand that intellectually it's hard to wrap your mind around, but it is a thing. It is a thing, which would lead me to suspect that these are values that Jack Murphy Goldman still kind of holds, or has a hold over him, maybe.
Your experience that doesn't reverberate outside of that. Is that, can you contain that?
Yeah, of course. Because what's interesting about that is the man is providing a service. It's interesting. It's a performance. It's a service because it's been requested. And then you have to act on behalf of the person who requested it. There's so many dynamics to it that are intricate and difficult to explain. But if there's someone that's come to you and said, I'm interested in this, would you do this for me? And then you talk about how and when and possibly you could do it, and when it starts and when it ends, and what the rules and the guidelines are. Well, then in a sense, you're actually providing a service to somebody else. And yes, it ends. Of course it ends.
I cannot fucking stand this idea. The selfish fulfillment. And then reframing it as a service, as something that you've done for somebody else, without kind of owning up to the fact that, like, oh, no, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to do. That's fine. Like, just say that. Don't fucking try to frame it as like, well, it's a service I do for somebody else that I care about. and they really wanted to be me to pee on them while they were blowing me. Oh, I'm sure.
But the people that know me, man, they know me on an intimate, real personal level. I mean, I'm a giving, generous, kind, supportive, loving, caring, very, just, I want to lift people up. That's all I want to do. And that was part of it, man. It was part of helping people at the time. And
that was part of it. That was part of his generous spirit, was doing things that, he would never imagine doing on his own. Of course not. Open relationships, water sports, cuckoldry. I mean, he wouldn't do that unless somebody else wanted him to do it.
it's not part of my life anymore. I have a very boring ass vanilla life.
Well,
Love
it
ya.
was a little exciting for a bit there.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that, it brings up a good point, which is I had left all that shit behind years ago. And I had.
When he says years, is technically true, but it's like 2019.
Already been working to build a whole productive, valuable, generous kind. Not that I wasn't before, but even outwardly and publicly in all these ways, I had been long down a different path. And if someone were to have critiqued me, in December or whatever, and say, you should change your life and you should do X, Y, Z, I'd be like, bro, I've been doing that for years already. Can't we just let it go?
Then you should have just said that. If he had said that, like I said before, if he had just been open about this kind of stuff, I guess that's kind of the lesson of Jack Murphy, is that if you get caught out like that, just own up to it and just try to roll with it and just try to be like, yeah, listen, I was not the same person a few years ago that I am today. I learned a lot. I had to come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better way to put it. Christ is king. Christ is king. My life changed. And one of the reasons my life changed was having gone through those experiences. Nobody would have cared. Actually, he may have engendered a certain amount of respect, honestly.
Even though you don't understand it and it's not what you're saying and it's a total straw man, nevertheless, even your prescription to the straw man is what I've already been doing and what I have been preaching, what I've been writing about, and what the podcast has been about.
Mm-hmm. And a normal person has no responsibility to engage or to admit to that kind of stuff. But if you're a forward-facing persona, if the way that you make a living is predicated on being different than the thing that you are or the thing that you have been, you do kind of have a responsibility, or at least you do if you want some sort of acknowledgement. If you want respect, then you do have a responsibility to that.
And so, it's like it was like an exogenous shock, a bomb, you're right, that had been built in the pieces, just sitting around waiting for some thread to put them all together and then to explode them. But you have to ask, it's like, why would somebody want to take you down? Well, because I was doing good. I was not like doing well, but like doing good things for people. And all this, and I think perhaps it was difficult for people to accept that.
Just to add to that, like I was going through kiwi farms, doing research, and in the middle of this, finding everything bad about Jack Murphy thread, somebody's like, I showed up to his brunch and it was a great time. I just have to say that we all had a great time. Yeah. So, but
nobody cared. Right. And those kiwi farm guys, they're psychopaths, those guys. And now by saying that, I'm gonna
probably true, honestly. Probably an accurate statement. A little incelly over there.
Well, we're gonna. I say that because I know that this is gonna end up in that thread anyway. So,
and it did. It's on one of the. I think it's on the news page or the page before. This interview has definitely been cataloged there.
I appreciate the time to actually talk to the man that everybody's talking about. Having actually participating in the conversation like we're doing right now is much better than, researching this or seeing the thing happen for me, from my perspective. And also I hope that this actually adds to the conversation, extends people's understanding, diffuses some of the smoke and adds some clarity,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And Benjamin, I haven't talked to anybody else since. And you reached out around the time, and I was like, "Yeah, bro, I'm not really, I'm not really in the place for that just yet." Because like I said, there was definitely grief and loss and mourning to go through.
Well, and shock.
And I went through it, and I went through it, and I did it. And look, it's a testament to the power of health and fitness, having a spiritual life, connected to a higher power, having a strong, committed family, strong.
All the things that you could have said 4 months ago and completely diffused this yourself. You could say that the life that you have been living in the public eye is a testament to how you were able to move on from the life that you led before. And all the things that you learned because as a consequence of having done those things. Brother, come on.
Strong, committed partner in your woman, being dedicated to your family, having a network of people that you can lean on. And now I've been able to metabolize this drama and sort of, give nutrient to my own soul and hopefully to others in a way that's pretty rapid, right? Like, I think a lot of people might have been down for the count for this, but podcast is up, Twitter is up, LO is open, things are going, we're all moving forward, and it's like it's already fading into the rearview mirror for me. Whether or not it will for others remains to be seen.
Well, speaking of the podcast, is there do you have like a map of where you're going? Do you kind of have an idea of like what you're trying to describe or explore? Is there a theme, consistency, like other than reorganizing the world perfectly? Like is there?
It's always been about me exploring my own intellectual interest.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's what my Twitter feed has always just been about. I quote books often and show my underlines. It's really about asking questions of people that are writing things that are interesting and salient today. So coming up, I got Luke Burgess, right? Wanting. Hey, we're going to talk about Renee Girard. We're going to talk about mimetic contagion. We're going to talk about scapegoating because it's relevant today. I've got another guy coming up, Adam Ellwanger, and we're going to talk about the process of transformation and the varying, the sort of two different kinds of transformation that there is. There's the return to who you were in the first place, and then there's the transformation into something new.
And so why don't you just frame this as part of your return tour of the things you've learned and trying to gain a deeper understanding of it? Why act as if well, those things are in the rearview mirror and people are going to do what they're going to do. Just embrace it. Just be like, yeah. And now this has opened a door for me, a door of exploration that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Now I'm going to have these conversations kind of surrounding, even maybe tangentially, my own experience so that I can understand myself better and what happened to me better. Because that's what he's saying, essentially, without saying it, without deciding not to just own it.
And Adam argues that right now on the new right or the post-liberal right, they're trying to return to something and transform all at the same time. And it's not actually going to work. So these are just the salient current subjects that I want to talk about. I had John Robb on. We talked about Russia. We talked about this network swarm. Jordan Hall. We talked about, there's just sort of the meta sense making of everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just continue to talk about things that are salient and talk to people who are writing and investigating these salient subjects and put them together. It's nerdy, man.
Yeah.
The podcast is nerdy. It's deep, and we go deep on people's subject material. And if you want to get along for that ride, man, I'd love to have you. If you're coming to my channel thinking that we're going to talk about today's most current events and shit talk other YouTubers, you're going to be really disappointed because that ain't my game.
That's not your market. That's okay. Other people are doing that. Other people are fulfilled.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that at all. Yeah. So I do appreciate you giving me a chance to just talk through this in a way that's kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had many requests, and I said no to all of them so far, except for you, because I figured you would bring your typical sort of just general compassion and kindness to the conversation, and you have. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being vulnerable and just speaking about it. You could have not done that. We could have just been abstract the whole time, but I think I appreciate you expressing yourself directly to me, and then also going forward with your life and just being willing to be vulnerable again on this, what do we call it, like this sadomasochistic construct of the internet.
This hellscape that I've at once asked for it, but also just been thrust into it. Like I wasn't a public figure until they doxed me, and then I became one, and then I had to roll with it, and then here we are. Sort of I asked for it, sort of I didn't, but it's my life today, and I'm going for it.
You won the lottery.
Some lottery.
Like the what's the name? Oh, I can't remember. The short story woman wrote the lottery. It's called Shelley. I can't remember.
Oh, the lottery where like they pick one person every year to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that lottery.
Which is a great short story. I also cannot remember who wrote it, but it's a great short story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more than once actually. So hopefully it won't happen again. I've been canceled by the left and attempted to cancel by the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you now.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm going to wrap up the recording, Jack, so we can chat off camera. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that's it, everybody. That was the interview. At the end of the day, I think he would have been better suited to just kind of owning up to more things and kind of not engaging in as much obscurantism as he did. But, as far as he is able to, he was being honest. He's being forthcoming. I guess you can respect that to a certain degree. I wouldn't take that away from him. In all honesty, I don't wish anything bad upon Jack Murphy or John Goldman or whatever you want to call him. I really don't. And if he were to be the thing that he sells himself as, I would be in support of that. I think in some ways, this interview, a little bit of a lost opportunity to just kind of own up to a few things. But, he owned what he was going to own. And we'll see what happens next. We'll be here. Alpha Cuck 4. It's only a matter of time. All right, everybody. Well, it's very late where I am. It's almost 1:30 in the morning. It's Easter Sunday. It's now upon us. He has risen. Jack Murphy has risen. So I'll talk to you all later on Monday. Back here, Odyssey and D Live on Monday. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll be talking about something. Not sure just what yet. May even try to get somebody to ride along. But all right, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Check out the links in the description. Go subscribe to our main channel. If you're watching this on replay on Zoobox Forever, please go over and subscribe to our main channel. We couldn't stream over there because we're still under suspension until sometime today, actually. But we'll talk to you next time. Adios.
Looking back, a morning comes, don't find your face in your grass. Take the moonlight by the texture and instead just shading. What is there? It's just the same. What it's dry in your crown. I'm spanning my grass, walking back so when my grass you're fading. I'm waiting so long. I'm waiting so long. I'm waiting so long. I'm waiting. Rolling back the stones around you, turn your face to your back. In a the silence of a better dream. Singing to the wind, you're shedding. The rainy winds will wash away all what you want in your crown. That is a man, but it's a breath, so anyways, we're fighting.